Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. Oh,
Oh,
hello.
we're live.
Oh, we're live. Oh, yikes. Oh no. Welcome everybody to the Fantasy Network. This is the long awaited Liveship Traders Trilogy spoiler discussion. I feel like I've been saying this talk has been coming for like 2 months, and it's because I individually reviewed the books, but it's finally happening tonight, 7:30. We're usually on Fridays, but this is a Wednesday night. We had to come in midweek for this, and I'm accompanied by two of my favorite people on BookTube, and I will just go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Chris, why don't you start?
Hi, my name is Chris. I have a channel over at Bookish Cauldron where I review lots of books, lots of fantasy books. Every once in a while, I'll talk about Robin Hobb. By every once in a while, I mean a lot. Yeah, it's great times.
Good to have you. You made the Farseer spoiler discussion a absolute home run. Provided so many good pieces of knowledge that I missed, and I know everybody in the chat had missed as well. So it was much appreciated. I'm glad to have you back. And then we have the man himself, Jake.
Apparently, I'm the man himself. I don't have a fancy name for my channel. It's just my name, which is somewhat boring. I also talk quite a bit about fantasy books, and as I say, allegedly, I talk about sci-fi as well, but mostly fantasy. And I don't talk as much about Robin Hobb yet as Chris does, but that's because I haven't read all of them yet. So I haven't had as much time to talk about Robin Hobb as much, but I'm very much looking forward to this because Liveship.
You were a big fan. I mean, you are ahead of me right now. I believe you're wrapping up the Rainwild Chronicles. Chris has already finished.
One book left.
Chris is finished. Chris has been had that when it comes to Realm of the Elderlings. And Jake and I are working through our first time. And Jake's been a bit ahead of me, but he hyped up Liveship so much. And then I also have Chris hyping it up. So it's just like this big storm of anticipation. And I got to tell you, I think it lived up to the hype and kind of surprised me in a lot of ways too. And Jake had a wonderful review for Ship of Magic.
Such a good review.
Yeah, Chris was a big fan. Chris, why did you like Jake's review so much?
Okay, well, Jake put a lot of time in it because I don't do that much of editing. But Jake read like his introduction to the review is like him reading passages out loud of the book and set to music with artwork. Oh, it was so good. And like he just picked just the perfect passages to illustrate how good the series is. And of course, he had great insights. I love that review. It's so good.
Actually, now for series that get readings, which most of the reviews I'm too lazy to do that. It's only when something's really good. So when something's really good, I just have in the notes of my phone, I just write down the page. Whenever I read something, I go, that could be part of the intro. Liveship, I had way too many. I had like way more pages than I could possibly read out. So I had to cut half of them because it's too good.
Yeah.
So good.
I don't take like a lot of extensive notes, but when I read through Liveship, I like to do bullet points kind of and then touch on it in the review as I go, just so when things stand out to me. I've never taken as many notes as I did for Liveship, not for Farseer, not for Song of Ice, nothing. I mean, I had to scroll. My thumb got tired with each entry. And I think that probably captures a lot of what we would be talking about tonight is just the absolute quality of content that Hobb provided within 3 books. Some people don't master in a 14 book series, for instance. So I guess what we'll kind of do and what we'll do to start this discussion, I kind of want to go through each book, maybe talk about some of the events and such. We can talk about the characters. If we get sidetracked, that's totally fine. Chat, I want you to, you're part of the discussion as well. I'll throw some stuff up here as we see it, as we take the conversation. If I think it's something we'll get to later, I'll put it up then. But this is very much, back and forth with me, Chris, Jake, and then you all at home, which we're at home too. So I don't know. So yeah, I kind of want to start with just going over each book. And, first up we have Ship of Magic, which is a book. I think it's a great book. It's probably my least favorite of the 3, but that's like saying, I think it's a 10 out of 10, right? Like I think it's a 5 out of 5, but Jake, I believe you said this is your favorite book of all time.
Yeah, it's my favorite in the series and just my favorite book in general. I had after I finished it, someone was like, "Oh, what were your favorite parts of the book?" And I legitimately had like 50. I was like, I can't name them all. It's like go to a page and it has like a 50-50 chance of having something I absolutely loved. Yeah. I think it has Kyle. It has the most tension of all the books to me, like coming down the stretch. Partially, maybe because I hate Kyle more than any fictional character to ever exist, because he sucks. And it's so it had the most tension of all of them. It has my favorite Wintrow plot of the three. I think Wintrow peaked somewhat early. And also, I know he got like no time, but I really like Ephron Vestrit, like the Papa Vestrit, the guy who died early. And I said, like, if you go to like my Goodreads, I said like it took 70 pages for Hobb to hit me in the feels. Also, I felt like this is just what Hobb does, in that I felt like I knew every point of view character after like one chapter with them. And obviously you can't do that multiple times with all the point of views, because, well, unless you're doing Malazan, but normal books don't introduce all new point of views for every book.
Right.
And I mean, I ridiculously love all three, but I the most love Ship of Magic. It probably has my favorite third act as well. Also, I'm saying this now, obviously it's called spoilers, but we're going to spoil things. So if you haven't read it, get out. But like the confrontation on the Vivacia with like Tenet showing up, and just like watching things slowly fall apart, and you're reading it, and I know things are going to go terribly and I can't do anything about it. And it's just, I couldn't stop reading it, despite it being slow and character based.
Mm-hmm.
My internet went out for a second. So sorry, guys. So I don't know if I missed anything major important, but we were just talking about how good the book one is.
You missed Ship of Magic. Good.
Yeah. I kind of asked Jake. Jake has said this is his favorite book of all time. That's right, yes. Jake. I'm not missing.
Yeah. This is my favorite book of all time.
I mean that's a pretty impressive list, because Jake reads a lot. Like a lot. And I would rank it at the bottom, not because it's a bad book, but just because I felt like the other books ended up building so much. The one thing that you said that I can really identify with is I really like the way you said, like, after a chapter with a character, you felt like you knew them. And that's why when Papa Vestrit goes down, I was a little choked up.
Yeah. He has like, what, 10 lines of dialogue?
Yeah, but I like that guy.
And his character death hit me harder than like a lot of character deaths in series who are like well-established characters.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, actually. And one of the things that's kind of crazy about Papa Vestrit is, and I'm just going to call him Papa Vestrit because I think it's hilarious, but one of the things about him is he even has a little bit of nuance to him, because he's not like a straight-up good guy. Like, Wintrow's relationship with him was very bad. So you kind of end up having, you have mixed feelings on him, and it's just funny because he doesn't exist for very long in the series at all. So that just kind of shows how good Robin Hobb is getting you into these characters, heads.
In Papa Vestrit's defense, I think Wintrow at the beginning of the book would annoy me as well as his grandfather.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd be like, shut up about your priesthood and your self-righteousness. Holy crap.
Not my house.
Yeah, Ship of Magic it's so hard. I love Ship of Magic and Mad Ship. Ship of Magic might be my favorite in some ways. I go back and forth. It depends on the day you ask me. It was actually my first Robin Hobb book. I didn't read Farseer first. I went straight to Liveship.
Wow.
Yeah, it was actually advice that somebody had given on their BookTube channel years ago. And in some ways, I don't know. I think that if you were somebody who doesn't like first person, and you don't like, you don't want to read about, the kind of standard coming of age trilogy, but you want to get an idea of what like Robin Hobb's writing is like, and kind of, you can do that. I mean, I personally, now having read the whole series multiple times, I think it is best to start with the Farseer, but you can do it. It will make sense. You will miss the connections. I had to make the connections about the two series in reverse when I went back to Farseer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so in some ways it kind of holds a special spot in my heart because it was the first like Robin Hobb book I read. And I remember like when I read it, I was living with a roommate at the time, and like I was like cloistered in my bedroom reading, and like every 50 pages or so I'd just like run out and be like, you gotta listen to this shit that just happened in this book. Like, it's the most wild thing you've ever heard. I'm a really fun time as a roommate, let me tell you. Yeah, I really like Ship of Magic, and I think Ship of Magic does a really good job of exposing you in the very beginning to kind of the grandeur of the world and the strangeness of the world, and then jumping right into the heart of the characters, because it opens up on Other's Island and Kennet at the pirate beach, and also Wintrow at his monastery, which is, despite the fact that there's not a ton of page size, but the monastery, it's kind of a weird place, and you get the idea that it's really strange. He's kind of like vividly hallucinating while working on some stained glass at the beginning.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, so she does a really good job, I think, of like exposing you to like hooking you with that and be like, this is some weird stuff that's going to happen, and then kind of exposing you to this really intimate family drama with really compelling characters.
Yeah, actually throughout the whole trilogy, I was kind of hoping we'd see more from the monastery. Like I thought maybe we'd get back there, and if they had one like kind of like wish, I guess that would be it, because like you, I thought that opening scene with Wintrow was really interesting. Like immediately he was the character, other than Kenneth, obviously, because I had been warned that Kenneth was going to be amazing. When I saw like Wintrow in the monastery, like you said, he's kind of tripping, working on some stained glass. This is interesting, right? So that's funny that you brought that up, because that's something that I forgot about, because his journey and character arc is so crazy. You almost forget where he starts out. And Derry here said something that I really like as a Song of Ice and Fire fan. Says Ephron is a bit like Ned Stark. His interactions with the other characters linger in their actions, and that is a very good point. How many times does Althea or Brashen talk about Papa Vestrit? I mean, what he would have done and what he would have thought was correct, and or what he did that they didn't agree with, or such, right? So that, I think that's actually a pretty good comparison.
Yeah, it's a really good comparison.
I like that a lot, and they're both dead.
Spoilers.
Oh yeah, whoops! Only spoilers for Liveships. My bad.
We had someone in the Discord who's the chosen one who hadn't been spoiled on anything for A Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones or whatever. Wow. But they finished Storm of Swords now, so they can't be spoiled. So now everyone knows. They were the last person.
That's good. Says Ship of Magic is definitely the most impressive in pulling all the hard work, setting up the characters, introducing the world, etc. I also think it's the heaviest one of the three overall. I don't know if I'd agree that it's the heavy. I mean, it's obviously subjective, but I feel like for me personally, Ship of Destiny was the heaviest. But you do bring up a very good point in the fact that there is a lot of setup that goes into this book. And I think that's why, and I know Jake pushes back on this a lot, but there are people who find Ship of Magic to be quite slow. And they always say, oh, it takes so long to get in. I will concede that there's 200 pages or 400 pages, whatever it was, over 2 or 3 days. But I didn't mind spending those couple days at dock.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree that it's slow. It's when people told me it was a rough start, like it's kind of a boring start, that's the part that I disagree on. Yeah. Because, well, if you look at objectively how fast the events are happening, they're happening slowly. The amount of tension and character building and emotional moments and, the Vivacia quickening and Ephron dying and Athlea walking out on the maiden voyage and, Wintrow having just not a good relationship with his father and already wanting to pulverize Kyle's face into the concrete.
So, yeah, and maybe this is, we should talk about Kyle, because I think Kyle has a very profound impact in book 1, right? What is it about Kyle? And I know some of this might be obvious, but what is it about Kyle that made you all hate him?
It's the same thing that makes Umbridge the most hateable villain in Harry Potter.
That's what I said in my review.
Oh, is it? I might be stealing. It's been so many times I've watched that review. I probably definitely took that point. But yeah, I mean, you hate Voldemort, right? But like Voldemort's so evil, it's like whatever. You hate Umbridge because you see people that personally reflected in her. And it's the same thing with Kyle. People like Kyle. You've been around people like Kyle. You have been subjugated at some point in your life by people like Kyle. And it's just so infuriating.
And the worst part, and then also Kyle, it's like when you see him explain his actions from Kefker's point of view, it's frightening how much sense it makes. Like you're like from a weird fucked up logic, like you have a few key assumptions wrong, but your logic is almost sound in a weird, like messed up way.
Well, he's justified in his own head. Right?
Yeah. Like the justification in his own head makes complete sense. And when he justifies it to Kefria, you're like, I kind of see why you think that. You're still an asshole though.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
And it's like, yeah, it's as Chris said, he's a way more like relatable villain in that, like, he's basically, if we go for real life, he's the person who was like a middle manager and then competent upper management retired, and then the middle management, who was kind of okay as a middle manager, got promoted to the upper manager and was instantly horrible. And it just went straight to his head, and he instantly like changes everything.
Forgot where
and
he
is
came
like,
from.
yeah, upper management was actually incompetent that entire time, and everyone actually really liked upper management. And you're just like, please stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely
Please.
agree. Yeah, I despise him. And I think there's something about the way he treats his own son that really gets me. Probably more than the way he treats almost any other character. It's the way he treats Wintro that just infuriates me.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And do you think that it's a Kyle thing, or do you think it's because he's from Chalced?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there's not a ton of other Chalcedian characters that you get in the whole realm of the Elderlings. I actually was just arguing with my mother about this the other day. She's also a big Robin Hobb fan. About how I want like a whole trilogy set in Chalced, because I want to know like what their life and culture and stuff like that is like. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, obviously, part of it is socialization, but I think he's just an ass.
Yeah,
It's part of like, remember how I said like, I think the logic from his perspective kind of makes sense. I think that's because some of the just fundamental assumptions of how the world works that he makes comes from his upbringing. Where like, this is one of the ones, there's the Kyle point of view at the end of Ship of Magic, where like, I thought I'd hit peak hatred, and then you get the Kyle point of view, and he's like, if Vivacia was only a man, then he'd be reasonable. And I'm like, dude, I somehow want to kill you more now. That I think would be an example of Chalced kind of leaking through, because they're not known as the nicest folk.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he is the representation of Chalced, as we see them kind of be a boogeyman throughout the trilogy. And he kind of embodies what they stand for in a lot of ways, because a lot of times he refers back to the culture. And I think it's impressive that Kyle is, without ever having a picture of him, is the most punchable face in fantasy.
That's true.
I think that's a pretty good accomplishment. And we talk about Kyle, and we talked about Keffria. How did you guys feel about Keffria in the first book?
I felt sorry for her. In particular, the scene where I think it's in the first book. It's some of these moments run together for me, but there's a scene when she's talking about. It has to be the first book, because it's a conversation she has with Kyle, where she like reflects fondly on the fact that like their relationship started off really slow, physically, and then he says something to her in the sense that she didn't put out, you bitch. That was basically what I said to her, and it like makes her like rethink their entire relationship. And I just felt horrible for her in that moment, that he would say it to her, that she had kind of constructed in her mind this like house of cards of their relationship and what she wanted it to be. And in the end of the day, it's just in her head.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, because I definitely got frustrated with her. But then in, like you said, these moments, you see that she saw this being something totally different. And there was a very specific scene. Do you all remember whenever they're having coffee or breakfast, maybe right before he leaves for the first time on the ship, and he makes her pour the coffee, even though he obviously could, and it's like that little sign of dominance, and it was so gross, because there are people like that, like, what I'm talking about, like you're in a meeting and someone shakes your hand and puts their hand over your hand, and it's like some power move bullshit. Like that's kind of what I felt there, and I was just like, oh god, people like this exist.
And it's kind of I mean, Kyle in general, I know someone who didn't like Ship of Magic in general, and their problem was they didn't believe that people wouldn't see how much of an asshole Kyle was Ship of Magic, which I kind of get, but it's like there's been such a sudden change in the power dynamic between Kyle and everyone else. And I think that's kind of what's slowly gets exposed to Keffria as she realizes like how different of a person he is compared to what she thinks he is, because for most of the time that they've known each other, he's kind of not been in charge of much, because Ephron is in charge. And now suddenly he is in charge, and, being in charge tends to reveal a lot about people.
And this is one of the things, because as we're talking about Keffria, I see people rolling in the chat, and this is actually what I was going to bring up next, and I think it's really interesting, and it's one of the things Robin Hobb does better than most other writers, and I think a lot of writers try this, but Robin Hobb does it so well, is when I think of Kefri in the context of Kyle and her relationship, I do feel empathy for her. I think that there's a lot of manipulation going on. But then I think about how she treats Althea. Is it Althea? I'm probably saying it. Althea.
I'll say Althea.
Althea. We'll go with Althea.
I'm going to say things wrong. I don't do audiobooks.
That's fine, right? But the way she treats Althea, ooh, man, pissed me off. And
especially with the added context of Ship of Destiny. I can't wait for that to piss me off even more on reread.
She was the catalyst for a lot of the things end up happening, in my opinion. And I just really makes me mad. But those interpersonal relationships puts a character in a different frame each time they have that interaction. So it's just so amazing that Hobb can make me go from scene to scene, making me feel completely different about a character that I've decided my mind on. You know?
Yeah. One thing that really frustrated me about Kefria, outside of just her treatment of Althea, was the way she judged her mother. So there was like a part where she tells her mom something along the lines of, I saw how hard you worked. I didn't want to work that hard. I just wanted someone to take care of me. And I was like, oh, you lazy! I can't stand her. Like, there's a part of you that's just like, grow up, like take control of your own life. Like, as bad as I do feel for her at times, at the beginning, it's kind of like, oh.
And then pulling down Althea as she's trying to make her own life.
Yeah.
I mean, that is frustrating as all get out. As somebody who in my life, I shot for the stars in my early 20s doing stuff that I wanted to do. And you have people telling you it's a bad idea, and they're not willing to take those risks. It's frustrating. That's really frustrating. I kind of connected with that a little bit whenever it was between Kefria and Althea and just the conversations they would have. And then also, like you said, with their mother, which her name is Ronica, right?
Ronica,
okay, I always forget. And I feel bad because of all of the, we'll call them side characters in this series. I feel like she had a really good arc. Like I
love Ronica.
Ronica in any other series would be like the standout character.
Yes.
And so of course she's like top 10.
Yeah.
I want Ronica and Patience. I want a scene between them so bad.
Please, I do too. That's a
good
really idea.
That's a good similarity to pull in. Ronica reminds me of a character from Dagger and the Coin that I was a huge fan of. And like Jake said, one of the best characters in that series. And in this series, it's just like, I mean, she's a great character, but she's a side character.
Yeah, she gets like overshadowed by Althea and Wintro and Kenneth and Malta.
Yeah, I did my review and people were like, where's Ronica? Why didn't you talk about Ronica? I'm like, shit, I forgot about Ronica.
I like her too because there's so often I think older characters, especially older women, are just completely ignored. You're
right.
Set to needle points and whatever, and she just gets this amazing arc.
Yeah, unless if you're an old witch in the woods.
Yeah, you get to be a crone.
Yeah, then you get to be the star of the show for a little bit, I think.
I'm gonna backtrack a bit to Kefria. One, I think, reoccurring thing in Realm of the Elderlings in general, not just Liveship, is the people who do shitty things in general. Like it's the larger impact that they have of it is often shown. It's not just like directly shown. So you see this with Regal a lot, obviously, and you see like it with Kefria just kind of being a bad sister to Althea and all the like consequences that has. I love that Hobb shines light on not just the immediate consequences of shitty actions. And a lot of the time we're in the point of view of the people with like dealing with the roundabout consequences. That's not true. Even the direct ones.
Even in the larger scheme of Realm of the Elderlings, as we won't talk about it, but I'm in the Tawny Man now, and I'm seeing things that happened thousands of pages ago, matter. So that I think everybody who appreciates really good fantasy or literature in general likes something where there is consequences for the actions. Like you said, kind of past the first 3 feet, right?
Yeah.
I like kind of like what Amanda says here. I never warmed up to Ronica. She made bad decision after bad decision. I can't say you're wrong.
I mean, that's true of like 3/4 of the characters in Hobb's books.
All these characters are dumb, huh?
Yeah.
I liked her in the end when she was able to see all sides of the different communities in Ship of Destiny. I mean, this is going beyond the first book, but
we can kind of dip our toes.
Yeah. In the end, when she's kind of the one that has to act as the liaison between the 3 ships, the Tattooed and the old traders, and has to kind of navigate that society. She's the only one really with the experience and gumption, I think, to pull it off the way she does.
I think she's very much a product of her time. It seems like the rules are changing in Bingtown, right? In the way things work, but she's still able to use her strong suits from her life and also Papa Vestrit. She did a lot of things by the book of what, we talked about Ned Stark and the actions. I mean, that's kind of another good example of this. There's one thing that I kind of want to mention about Ronica, and I want to see if anybody else picked up on it. Maybe I'm just being a baby, but did it piss anybody else off? What was the lady's name that was going to be sold off into slavery if she left the house? Was it Rachel or
Rach?
Rach, yes. So when Ronica is like, you guys all leave, and I know this is a little later, but since it pertains to Ronica, and I don't know if we'll touch on her again, I want to say this. When she's like, all right, they're burning down Bingtown, they're going to come, they're going to rob a house. Rach, stand by me. And I'm like, Rach, screw her. like it was kind of fucked up. Like she was like, everyone, everybody's out, get out, run, Kefria, take the kids. All right, Rach, me and you. And Rachel's like, wait, what? Why am I included in this shit?
it's like the I know the captain goes down with his ship, but certainly I'm not included in that.
Yeah, it was kind of you're right. It was kind of like a captain goes down with the ship moment, but like she just assumed Rach would stay with her, and it kind of bothered me. Like almost
I didn't pick up on that at all.
Yeah, I didn't, but that's a good point.
I wrote it down I pulled up my notes, and it's so much, but it's one of the points I saw when I looked down and I saw Ronica's name, and I was just like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that. She just like assumes Rach is staying, and Rach is probably like,
I mean, I don't think I've ever seen someone accuse the live ship point of views of being Mary or Gary Stews. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was interesting because, and kind of like Crystal says, she always talks about how much she hated slavery, but she's kind of expecting her.
Well, she doesn't. She does hate it, right? But in a lot of ways, she doesn't mind initially tacitly benefiting from it.
Yeah, and I think
that's something that changes as the story goes on, though. But yeah,
that's true.
And also, I think like I would argue, I know you had a different thing, but to me, like the biggest theme that got hit home in Liveship was complacency and people kind of being like, oh yeah, that's bad. I'm now just going to not do anything about it. And there's the great conversation between Amber and Brashen, where Amber just basically straight up says it. But in general, like a lot of, I think it's really good insight on humanity, because when like large scale terrible things happen, it's not because everyone involved was a terrible person. It's because the people who weren't terrible people just kind of went, okay, sure, we'll live with that.
I think that's actually, that's pretty fair. We have a question from love the name. Which character did you sympathize with most in Ship of Magic, Althea or Wintrow? For me, it was Wintrow.
That's hard. I love them both for a lot of different reasons. I would say in Ship of Magic, it's probably Wintrow as well. In a lot of ways, I think, because I saw myself in him, or at least my younger self in a lot of ways. And also, as bad as Althea has things and on the ships that she goes on, she doesn't have the constant scorn of her own father, which really bothered me as a reader.
Yeah,
I would also be Wintrow for Ship of Magic, at least.
Yeah, this is very much Ship of Magic, because after this, I hate
if you ask me for Ship of Destiny, that is not a hard decision. It's kind of, Wintrow does the reverse Malta. Malta, you start in Ship of Magic, and you're like, what the hell are you doing? And then in the end, you're like, yeah, Malta. Wintrow is the reverse of that. So
yeah, I remember. So I think I was actually on a Chatting with Nuts with somebody, and I said how much I hated Malta, and I was in book 1. I was in Ship of Magic, so I can mention this right now. I was like, I hate Malta. Oh my, I wish she'd just die. And I remember Chris putting in chat, he was like, I would die for Malta. And I was like, either he's trolling me or I'm missing something. Turns out I was missing something, because by the end, Malta might have been my favorite character. But I thought that was pretty funny. Actually had another thing, and I would have definitely forgot this. So kudos to you. It says also Devad, can I call him David? Deserves an honorable or dishonorable mention. Almost never mentioned in the live ship trader discussion.
He is such a funny character. Like there's every time he shows up, I'm so annoyed, but also I find it like extremely comical. I loved his death.
Oh, I did too. I really enjoyed it. I will say this, it surprised me, because I thought, all right, so he was either an idiot or he was the best schemer in all Bingtown. And I was banking on the best schemer in Bingtown.
Oh no, I wasn't.
I was banking on. I mean, I think it again goes back to the complacency thing. He's just he's the most complacent to the bad things ever, even if he doesn't endorse them. Like if you asked him, what do you think of like these bad things? He'd be like, oh yeah, those things are bad. And then I'm so you can make $5 if you're just totally fine with that. He's like, oh, $5. I could get a chocolate bar and maybe another snack. That's a lot of dollars. And it's like, man, he sucks. I agree.
Yeah, every time he shows up and he's just so out of place and he's so cringy, and especially as they have to navigate the situation with the Rainwell traders when Malta has the courtshop with Rain.
He's just blowing it.
When he like shows up, I wanted to like you get so much secondhand embarrassment. It's like watching an episode of The Office where you're like, oh
yeah, right. And, you know, we've all known somebody like that who could take a worse situation and make it worse.
He's so unaware of the consequences of his actions that like, I know he's not deliberately being malicious, but like, come on, dude, you have to have some awareness of what you're causing.
Yeah, and Amanda says the Vestrit loyalty to David drove me crazy. It drove me crazy, but I kind of like, I'm doing what I did now. I'm grinning the whole time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, come on, we all have like an uncle that we wouldn't take to certain restaurants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're 100% right. And he plays that role so well. And Hobb did a great job of getting the cringe off the paper, because I was like, ew, you know, just like cringing the whole time. Our good friend Philip Chase is here, folks. Oh my goodness. Reverse Malta sounds like a complicated ballerina move or an ice skating move. Poor Wintrow, though. Yeah, you know, Wintrow, it's so crazy to me because we're kind of going to be phasing on a Ship of Magic here. So I just want to say, like, I couldn't have really related to Wintrow much more like you, Chris. I agree. I really related to Wintrow.
Oh, yeah. When Wintrow feels pain in book 1, I feel pain as I read. And
I was kind of interested for the sole fact that, like, everyone told me, Kenneth. And I was sitting there like, Wintrow. You know, I was pretty sold on the character. And also, it was very odd because I knew Kenneth was supposed to be, you know, the antagonist, but I hated Kyle so much. Like in this first book, I almost like Kenneth was super duper interesting, but it wasn't until the end of Ship of Magic where Kenneth kind of comes into his own, right?
The thing is, when Kenneth takes the Vivacia, I'm going, fuck Kyle. Yes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How about this for the dilemma in the later books when Malta is like, I have to rescue Kyle. And at the same time, I'm like, go Malta, but don't succeed.
Yeah. Wintrow, he gets my favorite moment in all the books. It belongs to Wintrow. It's when he gets his finger amputated. That is my favorite scene in all the books.
I have that written down.
It's when my favorite part. I mean, you get the whole thing of him experiencing the pain through the ship and being guided to leave his body and all of that. And it's so well paired with the previous scene when he had been, they had attempted to goad him into fighting the bear.
Yeah,
at that port city, and he refuses to do it. He's labeled as a coward and all this different stuff. And so after the finger is amputated, he does it without, you know, no anesthetic or anything like that. It's when he hands it to his dad, and he gives the finger to his dad, and he says, "This finger will never wear a priest's signet ring. Will you wear it as a token of your victory?" And it is the best line ever. Like, it's so good. Every time I read it, I'm just like, yes.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Yeah, because then he said something along the lines of, I can take pain, I can face fears, all this different stuff when it's necessary, because he had been labeled as a coward because of the bear fight. Yeah. It's so good. It's so good.
I mean,
and that bear fight, like, we've all had the situation where it's like, you know,
people
like, oh, do that stupid thing. And you're like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And it's like, oh, you're just scared. And I'm like, why would I deliberately do something that dumb? And yeah, I totally agree, Chris. That was, I don't know if that's my favorite moment in the series, but that's because there's too many.
Honestly, it might be my favorite out of the trilogy. And I bet I'll say that again after we continue to talk about the trilogy. Did you guys feel, and this is kind of peel back the fact, you know, what happens when you were reading, did you think Wintrow was going to be sold into slavery? Because I did.
Yeah, I did. I definitely thought so.
I was sold on it. I was like, oh my God.
And when he's eventually bought by his dad, I was like, oh, it was all this relief, you know what I mean? And then his face is tattooed. And I remember like the face tattoo scene, like I literally had to put the book down and do like deep breathing because I was so upset. I was like, this cannot be happening. Like that scene to me was the most anger inducing.
I mean, you know, talking about, man, Wintrow really does have a lot of the best scenes.
It does.
In Ship of Magic in particular, he's got some great scenes. Well, and in the later books. I mean,
I think that's partially why Ship of Magic is my favorite.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. Philip brings up a really good point here, and he says, does anyone feel pity for Kyle as a victim of toxic masculinity? It's kind of talking about like the Chalcidian culture, I would say.
Oh, Phil. Always looking for the best in people.
Maybe I should in an ideal world, but I don't at all. Not even a little bit.
I think from a so like if you go into the brain, like the logical part of my brain probably does, but like the animal part of my brain definitely doesn't.
I have a feel. I actually have a follow-up question on this, and I guess I'll just say it now, and then we'll talk about it more later. But is it odd to anyone that people hate Kyle more than Kenneth? At the end of the day, at the end of it all,
no. I mean, it's the same reason people hate Umbridge more than Voldemort.
I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Actually, no. Do I even? I mean, they're both so bad.
Because I got flack in my comments. I mean, it was friendly flack, but people were like, "I can't believe you said you hated Kenneth. Like, Kenneth's a great character." I'm like, "Yeah, he's a great character, but he's a sack of garbage."
He's more sympathetic than Kyle.
Also, remember I mentioned the thing about Kenneth that I realized halfway through reading Tawny Man? I was like, oh shit. So here we go. And that is, I realized that, Kenneth doesn't really get human emotions. It's because he's partially forged.
This is the second time I've heard this. When did this happen?
Okay. So if you think about the end of Assassin's Quest, I'm not going to talk about when it comes up in Tawny Man because it happens in the end of Assassin's Quest where Fitz is kind of feeding his pain into the dragon, and Night Eyes is like, I don't want to be bonded with a forged. So the process of forging is feeding your pain into this dragon. What is a live ship? A live ship is a dragon. Kenneth fed his pain into Paragon and is partially forged, which is why he just doesn't get human emotions.
I think, though, forging goes beyond. And I don't, I think the process is different.
Yeah, this is something that's kind of, and obviously
I don't want to spoil anything for later books.
Yeah,
but
so maybe this is something we can bring up in the Tawny Man.
I agree with you, though, about the memory loss being a problem, though.
I'm open to the idea that because of certain circumstances, he has lost the ability to feel.
He's at least gone through a process that isn't as extreme as forging, but is very similar in effect.
But I don't know if that excuses the actions he takes in, when he assaults Athea. I
don't think it does either.
I don't think it can, but I think it is. It's just one of the multifacets of Kenneth. And
I'm not trying to dumb it down. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, Kenneth's just bad. Case closed. I'm not trying to say bad, but
yeah, it doesn't mean what he did is forgivable.
Yes,
but it's just a part of just why he is the way that he is.
So the thing, though, here's what I think is interesting, is that Kenneth actually has an opportunity at the end of the books to take back his memories and to take back his past when Paragon shows back up. And instead, he orders Paragon to kill himself. And that, for me, is always the moment when I kind of realized that Kenneth had lost his humanity completely and had chosen to. Because I don't want to spoil anything for later books, but there's another character who gets a similar choice. So I'm going to say, and there's an interesting parallel in how their storylines work out because of it. That's, for me, is always one of the key differences, is his refusal to look at the past.
Yeah,
that's a really good point. Yeah,
you know how they end up, and Philip is kind of having a conversation here. He said he's speaking of Kyle in this context. Said he was pathetic indeed. I never felt any triumph in that, though. Just a pathetic dude the whole time, really. And I feel like, so don't get me wrong, chat. I hate Kyle. I'd punch him in the face, whatever. But when you see him chained up and he's still fighting, when they finally go get him and stuff, it was just like one of those things where it was like, man, this is sad. Like, even Althea was kind of like, this is sad. And then I feel like you just see a man that was, he was guided the wrong way. I don't necessarily know if Kyle was a sociopath. as much as he was a product of his environment. And then I look at Kenneth, as Chris said, I feel like he had opportunities kind of to redeem himself. And his actions, in my opinion, were more despicable. I just find it very interesting. And maybe this is,
he's given every opportunity in the series to be good.
He's even doing some good accident, you know.
Yeah, it's always by accident though.
I mean, he's freeing, you know, I said I harped on this a lot in my reviews, but you know, Kenneth is surrounded by people we want to see succeed. So because of that, as a side product, we want Kenneth to succeed because we want Wintrow to be taken care of. We want I'm forgetting her name. Help me out. Brothel.
I know. Now the second you said it, I forgot it. Now
Wait, who?
Etta. Sorry. Yeah, because I think Etta's a phenomenal character.
Oh, she's so good.
We want her to also succeed. So because of that, we're cheering for a sociopath who are you know, reaping the benefits of his victories. It's just, I mean, first off, Hobb, hats off to you. I don't wear hats, but hats off to you, because I think that's just one of the more interesting things you can do, which is kind of like, you know, Germ says, you know, writing from the internal conflict perspective of someone's own heart, and she puts that on us. So she's very crafty.
I think Kenneth is not my favorite character in the series, but he might be the most multifaceted, like complex character that I've just ever read. And it's like, it's the combination of he has a like pretty fucked up and tragic backstory. And it's like when he talks to Paragon in Ship of Destiny, I both feel horrible for the things he's endured, but that in no way erases the horrible things he does and how he's just a horrible person. And it's like, it's also true that when I want to throw the book across the room because of how much of a jackass he is, that doesn't erase the fact that he's just had some horrible things happen to him when he was a victim. Like, I think it's in Ship of Destiny when Vivacia is going all dragon mode and we're in Kenneth's head and he's like, you know, oh, you know, maybe this could actually be beneficial to me. And like, he didn't actually care at all about like the personality of the Vivacia. I had to resist the urge to not toss the book. I ended up playing a bunch of 30-second chess to make me think about something else until I was calmed down, and then I continued. That's
yeah, I completely agree. And he's given every opportunity to do good because people see the good in him, right? Mm-hmm. Like Etta sees the good in him. Wintrow sees the good in him. In fact, Wintrow, one of my favorite scenes is a really impassioned speech that Wintrow makes to Divvytown after Divvytown's been raided. And then they kind of go back and reclaim Divvytown. And it's because Wintrow makes this really great speech. And just all these different things you think, you know, at some point that that Kenneth would allow himself to see the good reflected back to him, and he doesn't. And it's every opportunity he is given the benefit of the doubt in ways that no other character is given the benefit of the doubt. Even when he first boards the slave ship, he can't stand the smell of the slaves, and so he has a kerchief with him to like keep over his nose and stuff like that. And the slaves think that he's getting like teared up because the smell is so bad, and the slaves all think that he's like moved emotionally for them, and so then they want to like follow him and have this loyalty to him that he was moved by the plight of slavery. So in every opportunity, he's given the benefit of the doubt, and he never accepts it.
You know, and it's also a commentary on destiny, right?
Yeah.
Like his whole
so how did you guys? how long did it take you guys to realize that he was Paragon's? And that he was a Ludluck.
Oh, until it was like out in front of me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm an idiot.
Well, I kind of, at some point early, I kind of was like, hey, it's kind of weird that all the other main point of views are like Vestrits, except Kenneth. He's like the only non-Bingtown trader. And then I was like, I wonder. And then I forgot about it. And then I remembered when we were specifically told. And I was like, oh, yeah.
At some point, I started questioning it because they kept calling him, he kept talking about how he was trusting the luck of his name.
Yeah, you told me that when we were talking back and forth.
Yeah, and then I was like,
oh,
that was like so obvious. That was like the point where I was like, I wonder what's going on here.
That word choice.
There's a lot of like really cool, especially as you like reread the series, all these really cool things that like she's really good at foreshadowing. Like one of my favorite foreshadowing bits, and it's kind of off topic, I'm sorry, is at the very beginning of the book, right on Other's Island.
Mm-hmm.
when he's confronting the others, and they're mad at him because there's like this bauble that he's like kind of toying with them and acting like he's not going to give it back, and so they try to get it back from him, and he puts his boot on it, and then when he realizes that he can't take it from the shore, he's like, fine, I'll let you guys keep it, and he crushes it. And the other says to him, that which would crush what belongs to the sea shall in turn be claimed by the sea. And then he loses the leg that crushed the bauble to a sea serpent.
I knew it would come. I knew Chris would bring the goods.
Yeah. Yeah, shocking everyone. I did not pick that up on the first read.
Yeah, on the first read, I didn't pick it up
Yeah,
either.
I mean that.
That's why I've been trying to tell people. Robin Hobb is in very, very rare air whenever she is someone who is doing, hundreds or thousands of pages and the word choice matters. I mean, oh God, that's what I live for. That's why I read.
Yeah.
I love these moments.
There's so many cool moments like that in the whole series.
I
So
can't wait to reread this series.
Yeah, same.
continuing on with the world building, if we don't mind, how did you guys feel about the serpent sections?
I didn't like them. I'll be
Really?
I was so interested in the human aspect of this series, and I know I saw people in chat talking about like they loved how confused they were. I didn't necessarily mind being confused. I was more so just like, can we get back to Wintrow? Like I at this point, right? Or can it? Like I was so invested, and if it hadn't been for the fact that I understood or had a hunch that it was going to lead to massive implications about what the Elderlings were and whatnot. That's whenever like it got me through those chapters. So
yeah, Amanda says love the snaky boys. I loved them too. When I read them, I mean, I think for me they were spaced out far enough that it didn't bother me so much as far as
it was kind of the end of a section you'd get.
Yeah.
Snakes. I mean,
I was just so creeped out by them and their conversations, like when they would eat each other and all this different stuff. I was like, what is happening? And it took me a really long time to understand that they were serpents. Like I remember like I was like, what are these things? What are they talking about? Like the plenty, the lack, like all of it was like, I am lost. Like, but I kind of like loved the way they talked to each other and stuff like that. So it kind of like made it worth it. I thought it was just such a weird way of building the world.
Yeah, I really like I didn't like the snake stuff as much as like the not snake stuff.
Yeah, of course.
I thought in comparison to Farseer, I think the magical related fantasy element reveals were set up better. In that Farseer, there were some things where something is revealed and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's how it works. Liveship, most of the time, basically on every reveal, it was like all my favorite reveals are incredibly obvious in hindsight, but I never saw coming. And there's so many more of those in Liveship where it's like, and I thought that was handled really well. I mean, I'm not going to say I liked, the snake perspectives in Ship of Magic as much as the Wintrow parts, but I was never bored by them. I still liked almost all the sections.
Yeah, I think there was definitely some from book 2 on, I was pretty much in after I understood a little bit more from the end of the first book, right? And I think it's the fact that there is a tension that you can feel as the reader, knowing that they're racing to not forget. Like that is a pretty interesting concept, right? And I kind of agree with what Overdose Chill Pill says here. The serpents were a slog for me out of context, but I think I'll like much more on a reread. I agree with that. I'm actually really excited to see how I feel about them to reread.
They become like kind of a semi-important, not semi-important, but in the Rainwild Chronicles, some of those that you followed as serpents are dragons in the Rainwild Chronicles.
Yeah, I wondered about that. Cool. There's one, there's obviously like the lead serpent in this.
Malkin.
I'm also starts with an M. I don't want to say the name, but I'm pretty sure like it's pretty obvious who he is in dragon form, right? And I'm guessing they're the same person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've kind of, I think that's the only one I'm the most sure about. The others I don't really know.
Yeah, there's a couple more that you get to see as in their final forms. So it's kind of cool to kind of follow like how they change and stuff like that. I really like the way that Hobb does dragons. She has my favorite dragons. I'm getting all the dragon names mixed up. What's the Tintaglia? I love Tintaglia. And I love the reveal about Tintaglia, because I remember like the first time Rain and Malta like share a dream and they see the dragon, that like freaked me out so much. I love Tintaglia.
I also, what I love to tell you in general for fantasy series, most series have like super old characters, and I very rarely buy that they're 3,000 years old. And Tintalia is one of the rare exceptions.
Mhm.
I like
Where it actually I read it and it's like, all right, you feel like 1,000 and something year old. Which is somewhat rare for me. Also, I like that basically Tintalia. If you ever want to know the personality of my cat, she's basically Tintalia in personality.
I really like in general, just like the life cycle of the dragons. I saw an interview where she was being interviewed by Christopher Paolini. And do you know where she got the idea for the life cycle of the dragons? Dragonflies.
Yeah. Really?
Because dragonflies, water, and then they come onto shore and then fly in the air.
How interesting.
I thought that was kind of cool.
It's cool. I always like when they pull when an author pulls their motivation from something of the natural world. Like, I find that to be interesting. So I guess with that, we're kind of getting to the mad ship, right? And if I could close out Ship of Magic, I just want to say Ship of Magic was probably my favorite ending of any of the books.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Like
Storm.
It was pretty damn good. It's in my opinion Hobb's second best to the point that I've read.
When that slave guy, the priest, I can't remember his name anymore, when he throws the oil lamp, I was like, I can't remember.
Yeah, especially what's the name of the first mate on the Vivacia? The guy who's actually like somewhat decent.
What's his name?
Oh, I even included a quote from him in my dramatic reading.
The only one I can remember that was like decent.
Chat, help us out.
Was Mild.
You know, we didn't even talk about.
He's the guy who Wintro convinces to like free like one of the dying slaves, and then gets knocked out by the priest guy, and they steal the keys from him. He's the guy who I think it might be Sorkor. Yeah. I think I have one of my favorite quotes in the series is from him, and it's again I think Hobbs just insight on humanity.
Sorkor was one of Kenneth's guys.
Yeah, Chad. I don't think it was.
Torg was the piece of shit.
Torg was the piece of shit. Anyways. I almost want to go. Anyway, it's the guy who he's one of my favorite quotes in the series. And he's thinking about whether like he should perform a small kindness to one of the slaves. And he kind of realized that like he can't admit that they're human. Because if he admits that they're human,
then he's
Gamut. Thank you. Gamut. Gamut's great. Rip Gamut.
Derry, what is LST?
Liveship Traders.
Oh, Liveship Traders. I'm so dumb.
I thought you said LSD at first.
Don't listen to me, guys. I'm bad with acronyms. I was like thinking it was one of the books. Yeah, I agree that Liveship Traders is where you start to see the visible framework for the whole series, especially because you get to see the goals of certain characters, which I'll kind of keep quiet.
I like how Chris is just talking to the chat here, and me and Jimmy are just like.
Sorry.
Just checking it out. I saw someone, Crystal says we don't give Brashen enough. No one gives Brashen enough love. I want to say that in my notes, the ending thing, it says, I don't trust Amber and I really want to see what happens with Brashen. So I definitely love Brashen. I think the weird thing about Brashen is he feels out of all of the characters here. And maybe I'll get some feedback on this. I feel like he was the most fantasy-esque character, like kind of like disowned, older dude down on his luck. You know what I'm talking about? Like the old guard. I don't know. Like I've seen that character done a lot in fantasy, and Hobb kind of stays away from that. And that's probably why I liked him so much. Again, kind of reminded me of Wester from Dagger and the Coin, who I love. But
I need to read that.
Yeah, you sure do. It has some really great characters. But I love Brashen. I had to put that out there.
Yeah, I love Brashen too, and I like him and Althea's relationship, and I like their romance, and I like the slow burn between them, and I like how it goes on for 3 books.
Yeah,
Brashen, I basically have the same comment as I do about Ronica. Put Brashen in any other series, and he's like the standout character, but he's in Liveship. So he stands out less.
Man, yeah, he had some ups and downs, right?
But I mean, he's great. Like
so good. And I actually really enjoyed him and Althea's relationship. I know a lot of people. I've seen people criticize it. I actually love it. I thought it was really solid.
When it first started, I was like, "Yikes! Don't like this. Please stop." But it got sold to me. I was like, eventually, it was like Hobb changed my mind. I was like, okay.
I love when they're on that oil ship together.
I love the oil ship in general.
Where they're just part of the crew and they're living their lives.
Yeah.
Tiny small moment for Althea, since we got a few of them for Wintro. I know we're on 54 minutes and still on Ship of Magic, but what did you expect? And it's when Althea realizes she's like amazing at the butchering.
Yes.
I love that so much because it's like she's had, you know how like obviously as we read the book, Althea is saying how she was good at working on the Vivacia, but other people, like no one else believes it. And she, as self-doubt starts to like worm her way into her brain, it starts to like, you know, I start wondering how reliable of a narrator is Althea. And then the realization that she's not just good at something, that she's really good at something.
Yeah.
It's so immensely satisfying when it, and it's like, it's a ridiculous, like, I imagine pitching it to someone who hadn't read Liveship and it's like, oh yeah, so there's this character and she's like butchering animals and she's really good at it.
And they don't fight back.
And it'd just be like, wait, did she like kill the animals? No. Other people killed the animals. It wasn't even hard. They're just all piled together. And it's like, all right, well, it's still amazing, even though it doesn't sound amazing.
Yeah.
You can feel the victory for her, I think.
Yes.
And that goes a long way whenever you're spending all this time with this character, and she's been such an underdog the whole time.
Also, we haven't talked about the Liveships themselves.
Yeah, we'll mix it in here with the
Madship. We do need to get to Madship.
So I have a quote here, and I gotta put it up because I'm blind. But this is something I pointed out. I sent this to Chris, and it's just an excerpt from Madship. It says, "To set sail on a madship in the dim hope of seeking out and recovering her family's live ship was an errand for a fool. Who else could believe I think it says in the success of such undertaking?" The next line says, "Paragon," Amber said. It was an errand for a fool.
Yeah.
And the next person to speak in that paragraph is Amber. And that is when I pieced together that Amber was indeed the fool. Let's go.
I have to give full credit to Pranav, who's Child of Honor on Discord for this, who was very confident on this in Ship of Magic.
That's wild to me.
And I was like, I kind of like when I read Amber, I was like, wow, Amber talks like similarly to the Fool. Like they talk about like history the same way. I'm like, but Amber is Amber. And then later in Madship, I'm like, the Tawny Man trilogy, Golden Fool.
Yeah.
And then there's a similar line where it might even be the same like conversation that you mentioned. And it's where, and I was like, Pranav at this point was like super confident, and I was like 60-40 in favor of it. Amber being the fool, and they're going out, and someone says like, you know, you'd be a fool to do this, and Amber's like, I've been called a fool before, and I'm just like, really?
Yeah, she gets a more on the button as she goes.
I had to make the connection in reverse because I read the series first, and so
oh shit, the Fool's Amber. What?
So when I read the Farseer books, I remember when I was introduced to the Fool, the first few scenes with him, I was like, I wonder if this is Amber's brother. Like that was my like mind because he was really like opaque about his childhood and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, they got to be related. And it, like the whole time in my mind, I was just thinking they were related because they were described similarly and they talked similar. I thought maybe they came from the same like island or something. And it wasn't until the Fool dipped his hands in the Skill River in Assassin's Quest, and then I was like, oh, that's why Amber wears gloves. That's why the weird thing happened with Malta when she touched her. Like I was like losing my mind. It's one of my favorite like series connections.
Yeah, it's such a good connection, and someone mentioned the gloves kind of gave it away. And I remember that's when I had suspicions. I was like, oh, okay. And I think it was Ship Magic. I was like, what if that's the Fool? And I was like, I think I'm reaching here. And then it was Madship whenever I read that line, and I sent it to Chris immediately because being someone that's read A Song of Ice and Fire, word placement and word choices matter so much in that series. It's something I'm always looking for, and so very rarely do I get that from an author. And Robin Hobb does it so well. I mean, it's literally my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing in author.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's funny. I thought a similar thing for Chris. Like, you know, Chris said, maybe this is Amber's brother. I was like, wait, Fool went to like some place and he had a home. Maybe Amber's like also from there.
I kind of had that thought as well. And does the Fool mention having a sister? I felt like
no, he doesn't. He's pretty quiet about his childhood.
Yeah.
I wonder when I would have figured it out if I read it when it came out and I didn't know the next series was called the Tawny Man trilogy and had a book called Golden Fool.
Yeah, could you imagine reading these? Like, I always think about that, like Farseer. Like, if you had read Royal Assassin and had to wait for Assassin's Quest,
that would suck.
Or finishing Ship of Magic and having to wait. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, woo. That's tough, and that's one of the things that we have to kind of give credit for is Robin Hobb's done. This is a narrative that was crafted over many years, thousands of pages, and just right here with the first two trilogies, you see so much crossover. It's so amazing to me,
and I'm still fully convinced it has had less mainstream success because of the damn titles.
Probably,
You think so?
I literally, when I was like, deciding what fantasy series to read, I saw Assassin's Apprentice, and I'm like, I don't really want to read about assassin school and like assassinating people. And then only when I saw comments be like, yeah, she's one of the best character writers in the genre. It was Jay from Captured in Words talking about and actually describing how it was like, you know, a super about Fitz who was like really introspective and lonely. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good. But it's also, based on the title. The title made me assume it was like
I don't think
assassin school.
Yeah, I think the title's misleading, but I like the title. Like as like just like a words, I guess. Like I think it sounds nice, but especially because Fitz does a little assassinating.
Yeah, so true. I will say from when I was getting back into fantasy, the cover art for the Mass Market paperbacks completely was
really bad.
And then the name is true. I was like, an assassin. He's going to be so good at it. And back, well, I was very wrong. I was very wrong. And I think the live ship titles are fine. The Mad Ship and
the Mad Ship is, I think his best two titles is the Mad Ship and Fool's Errand.
The Mad Ship is a good title. Ship of Magic is a terrible title.
Yes,
yeah, it's a
I'm almost like embarrassed to say it when people are like, "What's your favorite book ever?" I'm like, Ship of Magic.
It always reminds me of the Anne McCaffrey one. Every time I hear it, I think of the ship that sings or the ship who sings. That's what I always think of when I hear it.
I could see that. That's really, really funny. Oh, man.
Although I like that Fitz as an assassin isn't just a death machine. I get so annoyed by assassins in books
me too.
Who are just like death machines. Who just like, you know, they're fighting like a bunch of trained soldiers. Well, they have no armor and theoretically have to spend their time learning poisons and stuff, but they'll easily kill them all. And I'm just like, what?
No, yeah, I agree.
Be sneaky, poison.
Okay, I know this is off topic of Liveship, so I promise we'll get back onto this. People are very hard on Fitz about how he's not good at it as an assassin, but at the end of the Assassin's Quest, when he poisons those people and makes them sick, that was pretty damn impressive. And I think about that all the time. And it's one of the coolest payoff moments. He does know what he's talking about.
Yeah, he's just an actual assassin and not a death machine. So
Trial and error process. Okay.
Yeah, the Mad Ship has some of my favorite politicking of all the books. It has the most politicking.
Like what? What moments do you like from it?
I like the whole storyline with Cirilla and trying to figure out who wanted this mission of the satrap of Jamalia going to Bingtown, and who was trying to profit from that. And also, I think that sometimes I like the fact that in like the Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny, the politics goes beyond just like very powerful people stabbing each other in the back and actually involves, you know, societies having to meld together, come together, overcome differences and work together, which is the sociological function of politics outside of the dinner party function of politics, which tends to be in fantasy the only type of function of politics that you see. Where I thought this went much, much deeper.
It did, yeah, you're right. And they even talk about tariffs and fees being charged to the docks, right? I'm trying to remember exactly where Bingtown is once we're done with Mad Ship.
They've reconstructed a society for themselves. So they have they have the 3 ship people and the tattooed are allowed to have lands. Some of the tattooed end up going with the Rainwilds, because the Rainwilds needs fresh blood because they have such a hard time reproducing, and so some of them decide that they're willing to put in the sacrifices needed to stake out a claim for themselves in the Rainwilds area.
I'm sure that'll have no long-term consequences.
Yeah, none at all. And so yeah, they've kind of allowed for a society where people have a lot more opportunity instead of it being this kind of melding of the merchant class with the aristocracy.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about it, another one of the themes I love in Liveship is kind of the false dichotomy between whatever change is like happening right now that's bad and the status quo, where so many people in Bingtown are like, we don't like this change that's happening, so we have to support the status quo. And I think it's really Ronica who really puts forward the like, maybe we can just make changes that don't suck. You ever think about that, people? And I think also the status quo in general in Liveship is another really important theme, where it's the importance people put on the status quo when it's actually could be harmful. And I think my favorite part of Madship is probably the stuff on the Vivacia with Kenneth and Wintrow, because I think this is where Hobb's ability to write, I want to say almost like, I don't know if weird or unique is the right term, but relationships that are completely unlike anything we would see in reality, and how she somehow like nails the dialogue. In general, I think she's much, much better than basically everyone else at capturing how one person will talk to various people differently. And it's not just like one person has one voice for dialogue. You know, Wintrow's going to talk differently with Kenneth and Edda and Vivacia. And there's some authors do this, like, you know, if you have someone talking to their best friend, the author can be like, I can pull for how I talk to my best friend. But what the hell did Hobb pull from to be like, this person is talking with the moderately insane boat that kind of thinks they're kind of an idiot, but also is one of their only friends. And I'm talking about like Brashen and Paragon. Like, what do you pull from to nail the dialogue there? And yet she does, like, every time. And it makes no sense.
Yeah, I think largely it's about the boats in this one, right? And also about Paragon. And I love Brashen and Paragon's relationship.
Oh, it's so good.
It's very, very good.
Yeah. And she makes all the Liveships feel so unique. Like Brashen is very different from Vivacia, who is very different from Ophelia. Ophelia is actually probably my favorite live ship. I love her so much. If I had to choose a ship that I wanted to like sail on, it would be Ophelia.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely not Paragon.
No. And Vivacia is a little bit tumultuous as well, so I wouldn't choose her. But
she had a rough start.
Yeah. So they all have such interesting personalities and their relationships, and also the people who like live aboard them, like they forge very different relationships with those people. Like Ophelia's relationships with the Teneras or whatever looks very different than like the Vestort's relationship with Vivacia looks very different from, Paragon's horrible relationship with the Ludlucks, So yeah, I mean, there's this idea of like, this very happy image of what a life ship should be to their family, but it never really works out that way a whole lot of times.
You kind of have Vivacia in the middle on what, like, if things had gone normally and like if Althea had taken over, you'd have what would be a happy relationship. And I was terrified while reading Ship of Magic. I was like, okay, the mad ship, it's probably Paragon, but what if it's Vivacia? And I was very, very scared while reading Ship of Magic. Fortunately, this time it is referring to Paragon primarily. I think when I think of like animal companions, do the boats count as animal companions?
It's a very good question.
Well, they're kind of undead animal companions.
I mean, yeah, they are really, if you think about it.
So do they count? If I make an animal companion tier list, do I include live ships?
I think. Shit, I don't know.
Well, they're very well. It depends, right? Because in some ways, they're only a vessel for the human memories.
It's true.
It's true. That's a tough question.
I don't know. My vote is tentatively no, but I could be convinced.
I'd like to know what the chat thinks. Chat, are live ships animal companions? Yes or no?
Can we do a poll? Can we put a straw poll in chat?
Straw poll up, but
it doesn't matter. Whatever.
The Mad Ship is such a good second book, and the way it ends is so incredible. I think the ending of the ball, the Bingtown ball, how that all plays out, how Malta freeing the dragon, all of those moments are just excellent payoff moments, and really are a testament to the work that was done in the first the first book as far as setting up, especially Malta's journey. Because I mean, golly, I can't believe by the end of the second book I liked her so much, because she is very rough in the beginning, and even in the beginning and first half of the Mad Ship, she's a very rough character to read.
Yeah, she's so disgustingly calculating.
Philip had a really good point when I talked to him about this, that people compare Sansa with Malta a lot of times, and they are frustrating in similar ways, except that Sansa is not nearly as manipulative and devious as
like
Malta is.
Yeah.
Sansa's more naive to start off with.
Yeah.
Malta is like the way she plays people against each other is it's scary almost. Like
I know.
Yeah.
And the fact that she turns into such a well-rounded character by the end.
Yeah, it's her character development it's out of this world. I mean, I think in general, like the word I use to describe Liveship characterization is it's off the charts to me. Like couldn't compare. I can kind of compare it to Tawny Man now, but I hadn't read Tawny Man when I read it, and I just didn't have things to compare it to that I thought were as good. So I mean, Malta's character, it's so good, and you go from like she's just so hateable in Ship of Magic, and she's a lot of people's favorite by the end.
Oh yeah, she might have one of the best character arcs, if not the best I've read in like just a trilogy.
I would agree.
Out of this world.
It's like, especially because like I hate her so much, and there's times towards the beginning of the books. Like I remember there's a conversation that Ronica has with Malta, where she's like, tells her something along the lines of like, your mother might see through you, but I don't. And I know you're really a terrible little schemer. And I remember reading that and be like, yes, go tell her. By the way, guys, I'm gonna admit full ignorance. I don't know what Scarlet is.
Me neither. I think we made that by accident.
Sarah was still excited, so that's all that really matters.
I mean, it was on purpose for your yes. Quickly Google.
I'm looking it up.
Sits nodding strongly at the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, Scarlett O'Hara is a character in Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
I've never read Gone with the Wind, nor have I seen the film.
I knew it was from Gone with the Wind, but I did not know the context.
I didn't know what it was from at all.
You know, I think that Malta's character arc is great here, but let's talk about Edda. Edda and Wintrow and their relationship, and to me, in the Madship, is one of, if not my favorite part of the entire book.
Yeah, I love it too. I love the fact that Wintrow gains Edda's respect and earns it kind of slowly is one of my favorites. I like the fact that Edda, through Wintrow, gains a lot of confidence and starts to see herself outside of the context of Kennet, especially when she learns how to read.
Yeah.
I love those moments.
She happens to also be a badass fighter.
And it's I think in general, one thing that makes Liveship characterization so good is there are no like sudden left turns for characters. Like it's not based on this big thing happened, so they had a big left turn. It's so gradual. And over time, and it's like when you go from hating Malta to loving Malta, Robin Hobb doesn't do it by changing who Malta is. Like she obviously does develop, but she's still, or anyone who kind of turns around, she's still clearly the same person. And it's the same thing with Edda and Wintrow, like, and Wintrow and Kennet, like Wintrow and Kennet, you wouldn't think like they'll get along.
Yeah.
They very, like Wintrow almost very slowly goes to like idolize Kennet, which is frightening, especially when you're in Kennet's point of view. It's like you read it from Wintrow's point of view and you're like, that Kennet guy, and then you read it from Kennet's point of view and it's just like,
well, like there's one of my Wintrow. Kennet actually gets one of my favorite lines to Wintrow because he's it's when Wintrow's healing him from the leg amputation, and he says something along the lines of like, "They only marked your face, don't let them mark your soul," or something like that. And it's like one of my favorite lines, and I think it's like it's one of the few instances of like Kennet being good for goodness' sake only, and it's only Wintrow that I think he ever really extends that to, and I think in a lot of ways is because Kennet sees Wintrow as what he would have been had Egret never happened to him.
Yeah.
Can I go? I think my favorite Kennet quote from this book is so it's after like he asked what Wintrow would want to happen to Kyle, and Wintrow's like, I don't want Kyle to die, because Wintrow's, I guess, more merciful than I am. And when he brings like the priest over, and the priest says like, you're mad, and he's like, why do people just call me mad when I arrange things in a way that favors me? And I'm like, But I mean, you are still mad, but I also see where you're coming from.
I do like
crazy,
that.
Though,
I do love that line too. I remember that.
We got to bring up the elephant in the room. Kennet wanted Wintrow to knock up Edda.
I know, that's one of the most uncomfortable lines.
in the world
Well, it's
was
How
because
did
that?
Hobb come up with that? Like, what
he
you're
wanted-
writing, and you're like,
he needed another Vestrit aboard the ship.
I was blown away, and he's like edging her on into it. I'm just like, I thought it was gonna happen.
Yeah, I did too, actually. And I'm not convinced that in later years it doesn't. We don't really get much of even in the later books. You don't get much of their storyline. I mean, in later books, it's like they're occasionally casually mentioned, like, but you don't really know. I can see a future where they're lovers.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I think Edda is one of the breakings from the monastery that Wintrow has. Her being, you know, obviously she was in the brothel and whatnot, and the way of life that she lived would have been considered pretty despicable for a priest. And for him to then see the good in that person for exactly who they are, where they were, I think it had a pretty profound impact on Wintrow as a person. With that said, I hate Wintrow now, so it doesn't matter.
Why do you hate Wintrow? I mean, you hate Wintrow because of Ship of Destiny. So
Ship of Destiny.
We'll table that for then.
Oh, I'll go off about me some Wintrow. My God. So I'm trying to think in Madship, like other things that really stood out to me. And I know one of them was just the fact that, and we talk about kind of like live ships, but like Paragon is just such a great character. Like he could easily be someone's favorite character in this trilogy.
I love Paragon.
oh yeah, all the live ships, but Paragon especially.
Yeah,
They're
and then piecing that together with Kenneth's past and stuff was so fun.
So I guess like a lot of sentient objects or animal companions, like people like them because they're cool or like amusing. Hobb just takes it to another level where like the sentient object has like an insanely like deep character arc, really well fleshed out relationships, and like all the stuff you'd expect of an incredibly well written human character. That I think my one sentence pitch to someone for Liveship, or like that I just said, was that the boats have psychological depth. Like that's how good the characterization is in Liveship, and it's so true. And
some people might hear that and check out. They might go, "What? I'm good."
Yeah, Paragon is probably the most tragic character because he's the one he's the one that's probably in some ways victimized by Egret the most. Because he not only has his own physical abuse done to him, the hacking of his face, but he takes all of the memories from Kenneth.
Yeah.
And he's the one that has to live with him.
Yeah.
Completely contextless. And one of the most tragic moments in the books, and I can't remember if it's in the Madship or Ship of Destiny, is there's a moment when Althea and Brashen are having consensual sex on the boat, and Paragon can feel it. And he thinks something violent is happening. Like he thinks, he thinks like he's that, and it's just horrible, right? Because that's his only context. I think Paragon is an incredibly tragic figure.
There's so much trauma in this series, and a lot of it comes to the forefront here in book 2. I had actually kind of forgotten about. I think I had suppressed that part of the book because I remember it being so sad. And this is also one of the reasons why people do end up feeling empathy for Kenneth, right? Is that Kenneth went through a lot of terrible shit. And unfortunately, he chose the path of implementing that on other people.
And he didn't just choose it once. He chose it over and over.
He liked it. That's the other thing. Yeah.
And like when he did good things, that was by accident.
Yeah. Or with ulterior motives, right? Like totally different. Maddie says trying to explain the premise to Liveship makes me sound like a mad woman. Like normally people just don't.
Yeah, understand. I can relate.
Yeah, I've tried to get people. It's hard to get like people who are not fantasy readers like sold into it, even though it's a great introductory series in a lot of ways. But it's like hard because you're like, oh, there's these boats that talk. I promise it's not like Thomas the Engine. It's just rough.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, what's book 1 called? Ship of Magic.
I know. And then like the book opens up and it's like the Pirate Isles, Others Island. Like it's very like a lot of thought went into these names, Robin Hobb. I agree.
Yeah, I think that this is a great series. that's very hard to pitch. And I kind of feel that way about Realm of the Elderlings in general, just because people are so like apprehensive to start a first person narrative, and then you tell them how character driven it is. And, I mean, there's a lot to sell here, but man, I'm glad that I got past some of the biases that I had against these things, because Robin Hobb has blown me away. And I think Liveships is like probably the best trilogy I've read to this point, though Tawny Man's probably going to take over it at some point.
Yeah, Tawny Man's probably my favorite.
It's pretty good. Pretty good.
Do we want to talk about Ship of Destiny so you can tell me why you hate Wintro? I mean, I know why you hate Wintro, but I want to know.
Yes, but one thing I do want to note is one of my favorite parts of the Mad Ship, and this is something I went over in my notes like multiple times when I was reading through again just now, is I love the Rain Wilds.
Oh yeah.
My God. I think that it is the best setting that Hobb has explored. I just thought it was amazing. I thought the scene setting was awesome. I love that they live in trees. I love the people. And this is one of those things, I know a lot of people don't like the Rainwild Chronicles, but I can't wait to go back. Like, I'm excited to read that series. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I got to read it. I'm like excited for it just to be in the scene again. So that was something in Mad Ship that I really thought was cool.
I will warn you, you don't spend a ton of time in the trees in the Rainwild Chronicles.
No.
A lot of it
ironically, you spend probably the most time in the trees in the first book in Rainwilds, which is so far my least favorite. But
most of the Rainwilds is set on a river.
Yeah. Oh no. That's not what I needed to hear.
Favorite Robin Hobb interview question. She was on like a panel, and people asked him like, "Oh, what's the symbolic importance of like the river in your story?"
Yeah,
and all the other people had like this, like, "Oh, it's symbolism for this." And Hobb was like, "Well, people need to go from Bingtown to the Rainwilds, so there's a river between them, and it's called the Rainwilds River, and magnetic. People sail up and down it to get between the Rainwilds and Bingtown." It's like, yes, Amanda. That's why there's a river there.
Yeah,
some Rainwild love.
I love seeing that. I mean, every time I ask somebody, new section of the series is their favorite, which I love. That just tells you how quality the Realm of the Elderlings really is, I think. But I'm excited to get to that.
The Rainwild Chronicles in the Liveship Traders, or sorry, the Rainwilds in the Liveship Traders, like the setting in those books, it's like, it always makes me think of like if Lothlorien was a jungle and like a really developed city. Like, that's how I always think of it.
I kind of like that. That's pretty good. I guess we're on the Ship of Destiny, boys.
So, okay. This is Ship of Destiny. Are we going to talk about like the elephant in the room, since we don't have like a ton of time, and talk about what happens to Althea?
Yes. Sure. And then I can go right into why I absolutely
So like, maybe a trigger warning for the rest of this conversation for sexual assault. So, I mean, obviously everyone here has read these books, so you know what happens. Althea is ultimately raped by Kenneth. It's horrific. It's probably, even though the scene itself does not last that long, it is the most brutal, like 2 pages, wherever it is, I have ever read. It's like, I remember reading it for the first time, and like I would read like a paragraph, put the book down, read a paragraph, put the book down. I was like, I'm about to puke. Like,
I think Jimmy started messaging me and raging about it, if I remember correctly.
I had to put the book down. Not like mad at Hobb, but like just emotionally invested in the story. And the thing I said about Liveships is I felt like it was unpredictable, but not in like the, oh my God, this character took a bullet or something, It was unpredictable in like, Wintro, I thought he would be sold into slavery. There was another moment we just talked about that I'm forgetting now that didn't happen. Like there's so many things where you're like, oh, that could have went there, and it didn't. I didn't think she was going to go here. I didn't think Kenneth would actually follow through with the action whenever he was talking about it and thinking about it. It was so gross to be in his head for that. Brave decision by Hobb to put that on display.
I think so. There's kind of a split. I mean, some people really don't like it. I mean, not that anyone likes it. You know what I say? But some people really feel betrayed by Hobb that she went for it. And I have a different perspective, which is that rape and sexual assault actually happens quite a bit in the series. Cyrilla is raped.
Yeah.
A lot of it is off the page. A lot of it is joked about. A lot of it is dismissed. In fact, Cyrilla's assault is kind of dismissed because I think even the chapter where she's assaulted is entitled Cyrilla's Choice, because she has the opportunity to just sleep with the satrap, and then she would avoid being violently raped by this captain. And so a lot of it is strange. Like, well, she could have just chosen a different fate. You know what I'm trying to say? So there's every opportunity in the previous instances, I think Hobb gives you an excuse to excuse it. And then in this final instance, I feel like Hobb is like, okay, so you excused this and you excused this. Well, now you're going to watch the reality.
Let's go. Yeah.
And that's kind of how I've always seen what happened there.
That's immensely deep. Wow, I hadn't thought about that. And I do want to say on a side note that I thought Cyrilla and the Satrap, it was like one of the really high points of this book. Like just all of that.
Yeah.
Also, we didn't talk about how terrible the Satrap is and how we also want to punch him.
Yeah. That'll be the lightheartedness after this.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Because Cyrilla, man, I really like the way you just put that out there. Kind of saying that, you know, oh, you excuse this, you excuse this. Well, here, live in the moment, live in someone else's terror. And I thought she executed it rather well. It's not something that anyone's going to enjoy, but to go there and to address it, I think that she did as well as anyone else could. I've seen it done in other places very distastefully. I don't think it was distasteful at all. I don't think it was pointless. I mean, it's a pointless crime, but it has, if anything, I almost wish it would have breathed a little bit more, like maybe more pages after the fact to like see that impact long term or something. But what I will say is I had to put the book down. Like I told my wife, I was like, I got to quit reading tonight. Like I just got to stop. And that is a testament to how emotional like the impact was on me. And then also it maybe it's a detriment, but it overshadowed the rest of the ending for me. Like I just can things were happening like, oh, Malta's here. Oh, I'm like, that's great. Malta's on the ship. What about Althea? Like that's all I could think about. And it kind of cast it. Like I didn't feel like it had enough, and maybe you never get enough time to digest it. Maybe that's the point. But I struggled to, Wintrow's big moments at the end. I didn't give a shit about it because I was just so upset for Althea, and I couldn't look at Wintrow the same. I mean, Wintrow was absolutely complicit by just sitting there and not doing anything, knowing what happens, know that she was telling the truth, and then just being paralyzed by fear of, I guess, disappointing Kenneth, who has become like a father figure to him.
I mean, he almost at that point views Kenneth like religiously as like a tool of the god he like believes in, and that's going to have some consequences to his actions.
But I do think Wintrow in the end realizes, right? I mean, he doesn't end the book not realizing what happened or his fault in it, because Edda is the one that eventually breaks it to him.
That is true, yes. And then it's the part of Wintrow where it's like he believes Edda and acts when Edda says, but didn't believe Althea, which is another reason why Wintrow. It's like from a character writing perspective, it's so good.
Yeah.
But from come on, Wintrow. From like as a person, Wintrow went from like both one of my favorite characters and people in the series to one of my favorite characters in the series.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was mad at Wintrow, don't get me wrong. It didn't ruin his character for me because I felt like he was someone who was faced with like the cognitive dissonance of, in similar ways, in the same cognitive dissonance he faced when he came to realize like that all these preconceived notions he had about his religion were not going to play out the way he thought they were. Yeah, it's kind of a similar thing, I mean, different in obviously what's happening, but there's that same level of to accept the truth of what happened, and to accept the truth would be to deny what you've built up in your mind and what you've put your faith in. And I think that's what's happening there with him.
It's very hard to accept that someone he actually thinks is a decent person, because he obviously isn't privy to inside Kenneth's head. It's hard to accept someone he thinks is a decent or good or tool of Saw could do something that terrible.
And it shows how manipulative Kenneth was.
Yeah, I mean, Kenneth is horrifically manipulative.
I
remember I called Malta calculating earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And got nothing on how calculating Kenneth is.
Well, someone else mentioned how cool it was when Malta got on the ship and immediately saw through Kenneth.
Yeah, because they think similarly in like how calculating. Like, they're the two most calculating characters in the series by a lot.
Yeah,
It's very true.
I mean, I definitely don't feel like Malta was always like she was scheming, but I don't think she wanted the worst for her family. She just thought she knew better than the
Yeah, she wasn't as malicious as Kenneth for sure.
No.
Kenneth's a monster.
Yeah.
He was abused. It doesn't excuse what he did. The thing about Wintro, and this is something I've learned because sometimes you go through life and you make decisions, and some decisions are really easy. The hardest decisions are when the right thing is going to cause a lot of turmoil and it's going to challenge your inner heart, right? If I have to judge, and I know this is a fictional character, but I'm getting super serious, but you have to judge someone about whenever they have to make those hard decisions. And you only get a few times in your life when you get that opportunity to show your character. But you have to believe people, believe what they are for when they make those decisions. And sometimes we know in our hearts that we want to make a different decision, but we make the wrong decision because it's easier. And I think that's what Wintro did. And unfortunately for him, that is how he will be remembered, I think, by his family and by the other characters because of the decision he made in, a game time decision. And even though Wintro might not be a bad person at heart, I think it shows a poor amount of character from him.
I mean, I think it goes back to the complacency, and that I think I would make the case the primary theme of that trilogy is that the reason terrible things are able to still happen is largely due to people just being complacent about it, not necessarily people participating in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jack, someone brought up Jack in the chat. Jack's response was, I think, also incredibly disappointing in a lot of ways too, because Jack hasn't been manipulated by Kenneth.
Yeah,
fuck Jack.
Yeah, I actually don't like Jack.
She was just like, no, I don't believe you. Like, she had no reason to not believe her.
Yeah,
and she just chose to not believe her. In some ways, I find her actions towards it more despicable.
I would actually agree. I think one of the reasons why Wintro is so offensive to me is because how much I loved him in book 1 and 2. I mean, he had some of the best moments, and he just fumbled. He fumbled at the end. And I'm not saying that Hobb wrote him bad, by the way. Like when I say that, and then people will get in the comments like, he's a great character. I know he's a great character. I'm just speaking from an emotional response here.
He also, go ahead. Sorry, I was
saying they should have drowned him. That's all.
Well, I was gonna say he does the one thing is he's going to get the chance to raise Kenneth's son.
Yes, Edda and Kenneth's son.
What did they name Kenneth's son Paragon?
Yes.
What did they name? Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. So I mean, in some ways, this kind of goes back to Hobb, like constantly using like foster parents as like modes of redemption. But I do kind of wonder how he will be as a father figure in some ways, and whether or not he learns from. Because I think he knows he was wrong. Like I think he leaves the situation knowing he was wrong.
Yeah, but he doesn't have much of a spine. You know what I mean? Like,
no, he doesn't.
And that really bothers. And I know not everybody has to be the hero, but I say this a lot on this channel for some reason. But you have to do about like the best from where you are. Some people's best is downright pathetic. Maybe that was Wintro's best.
He does stand up to some people. He's just terrible at standing up to Kenneth. Like he stands up to Kyle, even though like the easy thing for him to do in Ship of Magic would be, well, I guess I'm gonna have to do what my Kyle says, but he doesn't. Also, I agree with Maddie, by the way. She said it broke my heart when Vivacia doubted Althea. But
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah. And in general, like the entire plot line, I know I've just changed topics. I'm not good at staying on topic. You'll get used to it. Is Althea's entire, I mean, Vivacia losing herself while Althea is trying to go recover, and me knowing that Althea's entire like quest to get the Vivacia back is just doomed to failure from the start of the book just hurt so much.
Yeah, and also Vivacia being like awoken or the memories and everything, and she's like turning. I felt it's so good. It's so well written. I felt Like when people would go to approach her, I'm like, oh, she's wild. Don't go over there. Like
Mhm.
I almost like was like panicking when characters would get close to the figurehead because I didn't know what was going to happen because like this is something we haven't seen before.
Mhm.
You know, we've been conditioned that Vivicea is this kind of like loving, endearing character, and then goes through this massive change that happens to also have ramifications through all of realm of the Elderlings, which is wild. I just thought all that was so well written, and the tension of talking to, you know, essentially a mad ship, like it, not just Paragon in this instance, right? Is just like, I don't know. I thought it was like masterly crafted. I loved it.
Mhm.
Also, that entire thing of like Althea's thing being doomed from the start is a good transition to my favorite part about the ending. And my favorite part about the ending is that if you go character by character, it is a mostly happy ending. But
Yeah.
if you were to go to the Ship of Magic version of all those characters and tell them where they end up in the end, they would all think it was not a happy ending.
Yeah.
Like
And
if you told Wintro, yeah, you're going to be on a ship, King of the Pirate Isles, he'd be like, no. If you told Malta, yeah, you're married to a Rain Wilders, she'd be like, that. She'd be terrible.
Hey, she's
Althea,
like the
yeah,
queen,
you're going to be
man.
on the Paragon with Brashen. Kefria, you're going to be doing important things. Except Ronica. Ronica basically got
I
what she
think
wanted.
Brashen would have been happy with his ending.
Brashen would have been, Brashen and Ronica would have been happy in Ship of
Yeah.
Magic.
Brashen would have
But
been
I think it's a brilliant, and it's that it's all of them being happy with their situation is believable, and it's a brilliant display of people's priorities shifting throughout the series. And I think Jimmy put in his Ship of Destiny like thing, this is about expectations and like change of that, and I totally agree on that aspect, and that's one of my favorite things reflected in the ending.
Yeah, that really drove home to me at the end, and you know, what do you guys think of where Thea ended up, but also everybody else? Like, I said I think this is it's a trilogy about a lot, but it felt like a trilogy about expectations, and then what happens when those expectations do not come to fruition, and it's just an unpredictable trilogy in a different way than a lot of other things that I've read.
I like where Althea ended up.
I do too.
I liked where Althea ended up because she gets to have. I mean, she doesn't get to have the Vivacia, but in some ways, I think you come to learn over the course of events that the Vivacia was not hers to have. That's not how it works, you know.
Yeah.
You know, Vivacia doesn't belong to you, and she gets to have her own ship. She gets to captain her ship, and she gets to be married to the love of her life. Like she gets to have her cake and eat it too in the end.
I love the part where she realizes how she's been trapped by the Vivacia in her actions for like the entire trilogy. And yeah, I really like where Althea ends up because, as I said, it fits so well with all the other characters. She ends up with not getting the thing she's been going for. Like she fails at her goal. Her goal for 3 books is to become the captain of the Vivacia and get the Vivacia back. She fails that at all counts and has terrible things happen to her in the end. And yet it's still a happy point where she ends up because of how her priorities have changed.
That's what I like about Hobb in general is that, you know, people always talk about how sad Hobb's books are. I mean they are. I mean you're going to shed some tears. But they always have this really hopeful edge to them.
Yes, I agree.
That I always really enjoy. And I think that's on display here.
I've said it and I stand by it. I don't think Hobb does more bad things to her characters. I think she's just better at doing bad things to her characters.
Yeah, when you really take a step back and examine the level of like physical brutality put on them, I don't think it's worse than a lot of fantasy series. I just think you mine the depths of what it means to them as people better. Like it, just like you said,
better at it.
You know what it reminds me of, Chris? I mean, you've talked about this before. Is how people always say, "Oh, Gurm just kills his characters," and it's like you're out of here. Like if you feel that way, I feel very confident saying that you missed it. You missed the boat. You didn't read right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the same thing with Hobb. Everyone talks about how sad. Yes, Hobb is very sad, but I've also come out of Hobb feeling extraordinarily motivated and inspired in my life. So I feel like I've become a better person from reading Realm of the Elderlings, if I'm being honest. I really like the quote someone said here. I think it was Derry. Said, I like that Robin's stories are true to life. How many of us turned into the astronauts or firemen we wanted to be when we were little?
Yeah.
This is something I can identify with. You know, my entire childhood was predicated on the fact that I was going to be a successful professional wrestler on television one day. And I chased that dream through my young adulthood, and I got really close. And then it ended, unfortunately. And when it ended, I didn't know where to go. Much like Althea working on the crew, like, or not being on a ship. She couldn't imagine never being on a ship, right? I could never imagine not being in a wrestling ring. That was where I belonged. And now I'm over here on BookTube hosting live discussions about fictional characters. But, it all comes full circle. So I think that's something that we can relate to, because in life, life is somewhat about disappointments and changes of expectations. But those are the different paths we walk down are not always bad. I've been able to make something from where I've ended up, and I'm sure you too have, and people here in the chat, there's things that you thought were going to go to plan and it didn't work out. But those forks in the road don't always have to go south.
It's like Ronica has a conversation with Cirilla in Ship of Destiny. By the way, that part of this book is really good, and we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, God.
Where she kind of says, I had this in my dramatic reading, how life isn't about trying to like restore past circumstances.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, people totally get caught up in where it's like, I had this and this was good, and I don't have that anymore. And it's just trying to get back to the good thing instead of trying to get a different good situation. And it's kind of, I love that part with Ronica and Cirilla. I think Cirilla is another character. I'm going to be a broken record on this, where she'd be the standout character if you put her in most series.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about her like an hour and 40 minutes in, because Liveship, but her relationship with Ronica, and it's how she's kind of losing it in Ship of Destiny. She's really losing perspective. And going power hungry, but also like you totally get where she's coming from and why she's afraid of losing power, because she had something horrific happen to her, and her dynamic with Ronica. It's so good. I've said the word so good.
She rounded out Ronica very well, and that's why in the Ship of Destiny, I kind of felt like I robbed her because I didn't talk about her enough in my first 2 reviews. So I'm kind of glad we got to go over her in this discussion. And another person who kind of gets overshadowed, and this Selden. I forgot he existed. Crystal said it too. I did too. I forgot he existed, and he ended up having such a good ending.
I love Selden.
I love where he ended up. I thought it was just tremendous, and I love the fact that, I know we forgot it. He's kind of like the Rick and Stark of the Vestrits. Like, wait,
really
he exists. He exists. I don't know if he could talk when we first met him, and then he ends up, really being a major player and doing a lot of good for his house.
You get Selden later on in the series, dude.
Yeah,
I
was, as you were saying, he likes Selden. I was looking at Chris kind of like,
I had a feeling, because it seems like the Fool kind of alludes to that in Tawny Man at one point. I think maybe I'm imagining it. I do have Farseer and Tawny Man dreams every now and then. So, and I really like what says here. Can we all agree that Amber is the best non-POV? Literally in my notes.
Not in Liveship, in fantasy.
Yes, it says, how funny is it that the Fool was my favorite character from Farseer, and Amber might be my favorite character in Liveship?
Yeah, Fool might be my favorite character ever and never has had a POV. So
he's my favorite character in all fiction. I love the Fool.
He's contending for number 1, and I'll tell you why. There's not a single time that he appears on page that I am not glued to that page.
Yeah,
every word.
And it's funny. She actually intended the Fool to be like this very minor character. He was going, I think she never says specifically, but she always says that he was only supposed to deliver one line, one piece of information to Fitz, and then fade off into the background. I'm imagining that the piece of information he was supposed to give Fitz was the Fitz fixes vice, fat suffices. I imagine that was what she was talking about. And he becomes this really amazing character.
Yeah,
I think Robin Hobb has said the characters she creates tend to ruin her outlines because they don't do what she wants them to. And the Fool is one of those. Is she had him for one thing, but he kind of just appeared in the story as a person, and he took it where he needed it to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's a non-POV character that just happens to be possibly the star of the entire 16 book series.
It was kind of, so he was my favorite character in Farseer. And then I got to the end of Liveship, and it was like, people would be like, oh, who are your favorite characters like in fantasy? And I'm like, the people who know me, if I put the Fool first now, they're going to know the Fool was in Liveship.
Yeah.
Because they know he was high, but not first before Liveship. So I had to not include it. But now after Tawny Man, everyone knows the Fool's in Tawny Man. I mean, the titles. So
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that the Fool is definitely one of the best characters, and it's so funny because you can tell a lot of other authors have been very inspired by this character because you see kind of carbon copies of it, or people
Wit.
trying to,
Wit,
that's what I'm saying. And you know what? I'll be actually honest. I actually like Wit in Stormlight Archive, but now that I know the Fool, it kind of hurts it a little bit.
Yeah, I actually didn't mind Wit that much. I mean, I've only read the first 2 Stormlight Archive books, but when I did read Wit, the first thing I thought was, oh, there's no way he was not inspired to write this.
I mean, Brandon has
did he
said, like,
confirm that? Okay.
Yeah, Brandon has said, like, in his review of like Assassin's Apprentice that because Wit is, I guess, one of the first characters he came up with, so he didn't know he was actually going to ever get published, and he's like, yeah, Wit is
the Fool.
A lot is borrowed from the Fool. Yeah,
I mean, you can tell. You can tell, and honestly, I think it's one of his better characters. So, good for him to be inspired by such an amazing character as the Fool. One character we didn't talk about, and this is one I wanted to bring up at the Mad Ship, is Rain.
I love Rain.
I loved Rain, and also part of it has to do with the sole fact that we're in the Rain Wilds when we're with him. But when he's in the room with with the eggs or whatever, what are they? I'm forgetting now. No, they're logs.
Cocoons? Yeah, logs.
Oh, yeah, the cocoons. Yeah,
I'm an idiot. With the cocoon, I'm like, what is happening? And like, that it's a moment where you're like, I'm about to figure out some series defining stuff right now about the lore.
Yeah.
And Rain had a lot of those moments, and I just thought he was such a good piece to kind of connect a little bit of the plot. Even though there's no direct connection to Farseer, it's the bigger universe stuff that Rain gets to do. And also Rain is quite a gentleman. So
yeah, I like Rain a lot.
Also, if people watching this took a drink every time we said, hey, what about this character? Oh yeah, they're so great. Would they still be alive?
I mean, I don't know how anyone could read this series and at least not accept the fact that this is possibly the best cast of characters in a trilogy of all ever.
My sister hated him.
What?
I know.
Well, your sister's wrong.
I know. If people ever get mad at me for hating their favorite fantasy series, just know that I've had it done to me. I know how it feels.
We all have.
I mean,
I can take it and dish it.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, I agree.
Everyone liked the same books. That'd be boring.
If anyone doesn't like this, they're an idiot.
I love it. Rain is like the anti-Kenneth. Kenneth easily manipulates things to his advantage. Rain tries so hard to save everyone and pretty much fumbles it. It's true.
Yeah.
Oh
man, I don't know how to share this. But there's a really gorgeous fan art that somebody made of Rain and Malta embracing, and it was the background on my phone for a really long time. If I find it, I might do like a community post and share it or something. But it's like incredible, and like he's all veiled and stuff like that. It's like the best fan art I've ever seen.
I would love to see that because
I would also like to see it.
When I was making this thumbnail, I couldn't find enough live ship art. Now that we have the first year illustration,
I was so frustrated making my like reading thing.
Yeah.
So I also did the same thing for my Malazan review, and there's so much Malazan art, and then I get to live ship, and there's like no art. It's like
it's because people skip it.
Stop
skipping live ship.
Stop it.
I mean, we're yelling at people who are here.
Although it's funny, I've had the reverse happen now because I had such a positive live ship review. I have people commenting, it's like, oh, maybe I'll skip Farseer. And I'm like, don't skip Farseer either.
Well, Chris skipped Farseer and he's fine. So.
Well, he would have been better not skipping Farseer.
Yeah, I probably would have been. Yeah.
Like, it's good enough that, like, Tawny Man is still good enough that Tawny Man is good if you didn't read Liveship, but still read Liveship. Same thing is true for Liveship. That's why people who skip Liveship, they read Tawny Man and they love Tawny Man because it's Tawny Man. They're like, yeah, it was fine. I'm like, you don't know what you were missing out.
You know, I worked with a guy who read the Farseer trilogy, and then he had told me that he liked Robin Hobb. And so then when the Assassin's Fate came out, I was like, oh man, I'm getting the new Robin Hobb. He's like, yeah, I can't wait to read it. So we both read Assassin's Fate because this was back in 2017. And He was like, yeah, that was really good. And then I started talking to him more about the series. He had only read the Farseer. He jumped from Farseer to the Fits and the Fool trilogy. And I was like, how did any of it make sense to you? Like, how did you know what was happening? Like, what are you, like, I was so shocked. And I kept like quizzing him. I was like, how, what, and what, why did you do this to yourself? Like, and he loved them.
How interesting is that? That's so funny to
Anyway.
me.
I know I forget who it was, but there was a random person talking about a random booktuber, and they mentioned that like the first fantasy series they read, like coming back into reading, was the Rainwild Chronicles.
Yeah. I know that
the idea of starting Hobb with Dragon Keeper and then being like, I guess Hobb's not my thing. If you don't like it, causes deep pain.
I know that
to me.
Jean over at Jean's Bookish Thoughts, she's only read the Rainwild books, and she loved them.
Go read the other stuff.
Yeah, she's gonna be blown away when she cracks Liveships. Oh my goodness! All right, so I want to get trilogy ranking of the books. I already know Jake's number 1, but I'm kind of curious to see where he goes. So for me, it's a nice, smooth 3, 2, 1.
So wait,
like favorite. Like Ship of Destiny was my favorite. Second favorite was Mad Ship. Third favorite was Ship of Magic. For me.
Oh, okay. Mine would be top position would be Ship of Magic, and then very closely followed by the Mad Ship. Like they're very neck and neck. And then I guess like if I had to pick a least favorite, I guess Ship of Destiny. But I mean like they're like 6 out of 5 stars. I mean
yeah.
So my favorite is obviously Ship of Magic. And now in my review of Ship of Magic, because I have a Ship of Magic review and a Liveship review, everyone was like, oh yeah, the Mad Ship is even better. So the Mad Ship is my least favorite in the series.
Really?
And it is my 9th favorite book of all time. I have it on the list. One of the best books I've ever read. I think I have it a 9.7 out of 10. I called it a slightly disappointing, nearly perfect masterpiece. And then Ship of Destiny is my second favorite, which I think I have it as like my third favorite book ever. I gave it 9.9. I thought the last third had a teensy bit less tension than the last third of Ship of Magic, which dropped it down from being a perfect, like completely perfect 10 out of 10. And when I give something 10 out of 10, I don't give 10 out of 10s. 10 out of 10 means, I mean, I've done 2. And one was Words of Radiance, which was my favorite book for 7 years. And then Ship of Magic.
That's Chris's
favorite book. Yeah, I know Chris is the biggest Sanderson fan ever.
Yeah,
and
huge.
Yeah, huge. That's what everyone goes to the channel for.
On his back shoulder. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I think you have all the leather bounds, right?
Tattoo.
Yeah. Right? The red books there are my those are my Stormlight books.
They're custom leather bounds. You didn't even get the ones available. You got even more expensive custom ones, right?
I actually emailed Brandon personally, and my letter to him was so good that he made me those.
That makes sense. Anyway,
yeah, Oathbringer coming soon. Yeah.
Soon, but based on like the time scale of the destruction of the sun.
Okay, but here's the deal. See, it's the same thing with Wheel of Time, because like I really struggle with Wheel of Time. What's going to happen is that people are going to talk about Stormlight so much the way they have with Wheel of Time that I'm going to feel bullied into going back to it, and then I'll end up reading them.
I like Stormlight. a lot.
Yeah,
but
I actually liked the first book of Stormlight.
Yeah, Wave King's a great book one. It's not Ship of Magic.
No, it was a good book.
Yeah. What is Ship of Magic though? So
yeah,
nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah. Anyways,
the nice thing about picking the best books of this trilogy is that you can't be wrong, because they're all so good. Like
there's no order, like there's no ranking that if someone said where I'd be like, I don't know about that. Like,
so I mean, guess
you guys have me questioning what my order now. I'm like, man, maybe Ship of Magic was the best because I love the ending.
So you've not finished Tawny Man, Jimmy.
I'm close.
And then you have finished Tawny Man and you're on Raywilds. So how would you rank this? How would you rank Liveship with the rest of the series that you've read?
Liveship is my favorite. But if I mix Liveship and Tawny Man are easily my favorite too. Farseer I like I thought it was good, but it wasn't like when I read after reading Farseer, I didn't have Robin Hobb as one of my favorite authors ever. I had her as a very good author. And then Rainwilds I don't think is bad, but it's pretty easily my least favorite of them. And then if you're curious, my Tawny Man rankings, I like Fool's Errand the most out of Tawny Man, then Fool's Fate, then Golden Fool.
Cool. If you guys had to pick, I mean, Jake, you're obviously going to say you like Liveship more than Farseer. What about you, Chris?
I like Liveship more than Farseer. I mean, I love Farseer, but I like Liveship better. I think Liveship does better with plotting, and I think Liveship does better in communicating the scope and stakes of the world than the Farseer does, and part of that is the multiple POV allows her to. And then I would say for my rankings of the series, my rankings are Tawny Man would probably be number 1, then Liveship, then Farseer, then The Fits and the Fool, and then the bottom would be Rain Wilds. I still like the Rain Wilds. All the Rain Wild books got 4 stars for me.
Is Fits and the Fool not good?
It's good.
A lot of people love it. I've seen it be people's favorite. I've seen it be people's second least favorite, or somewhere in the
It's
middle.
like worrying me because I never hear it.
Really good.
Number 1. Okay.
It's really good. It's really, really good. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But you're comparing it to the other Fitz novels. It's hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of people who like it the most.
Okay.
I think you two like Farseer way more than I like Farseer. I definitely don't dislike Farseer. And I think the main reason is in Farseer, I'm not as much of a Fitz fan as you two are. Like, I think he's good, but after Farseer, I wasn't like, he's one of my favorite characters ever. Him. And then after Fool's Errand, I was like, he's one of my favorite characters ever.
I wanted to put him in my pocket and take him everywhere and protect him from any ounce of harm.
Yeah, I thought Farseer had Fitz. I thought was good, but I thought the side characters and the supporting cast was proportionately quite a bit stronger. Like with Burrich and Jade and the Fool and Night Eyes. That was my favorite part of Farseer, which is the supporting cast.
Yeah, I think for me, Royal Assassin's the best book I've read this year still. That I thought that book was perfect. I literally don't have a qualm about it. It's probably my number 2 book of all time. Assassin's Quest feels better now that I'm in Tawny Man, if I'm being honest. But as a reading experience as a trilogy, I think Liveships is better because I felt like every single book was a hit. Whereas Assassin's Quest, I liked it, but there was stuff about it I didn't like. I don't have anything other than Wintro just pissing me off. I don't really have anything about Liveships where I'm like, ugh. So, I mean, it would be hard for me to say that Liveships isn't a perfect trilogy. I could honestly say that I think it's a 10 out of 10. So I think I like Liveships more as a complete piece of work. I'm more emotionally invested in the Fitz cast.
I think I'm more emotionally invested in the Liveship cast.
Really?
Primarily, yeah. After Tawny Man, that might not be true.
Well, that's fair. Then that's where I'm coming from.
But after Ship of Destiny, I was definitely more invested in. Even after Ship of Magic, I was probably more invested in the Liveship cast. But that's not because I'm not invested in Farseer. That's because it's Ship of Magic. But it's as I said, just Fitz isn't my favorite. I like Fitz. And I mean, he actually might. It's funny because I say this. I should say Fitz wasn't my favorite past tense. Because for Tawny Man, if you just counted him for Tawny Man, he'd be in contention for my favorite protagonist ever.
Wow. Yeah.
I am more of a fan of middle-aged Fitz than young Fitz.
That's fine. You're maturing, It's good. I like this. Would be interested to hear Chris' top 3 Hobb books. I think we could all give our top 3 Hobb books. This would be a good way to wrap up the stream.
My favorite. Sorry, by the way, the camera changed. My my nice camera died. So my favorite 3 would be number 1 would be Fool's Fate. Number 2 would be Forest Mage, and number 3 would be Ship of Magic.
Wait, Forest Mage, is that?
That's her Soldier Sun trilogy.
Oh, okay.
Which people hate. It has really low ratings on Goodreads. People detest that series. It is brilliant. I do not know what people are talking about. I love that series. And Forest Mage for me was just a complete mind F. It was great. The plotting was great. The payoff was great. It blew my mind. It's a very different setting than a lot of other fantasy books, and it was just crazy.
Also, my brain was trying to think of what Forest Mage is and somehow missed what you said for your 3rd book.
Oh, Ship of Magic.
Oh, I approve.
So I've only read up to I finished the second book in the Tawny Man, so this is not a final list by any means. But right now, number 1 is Royal Assassin by a mile. I would say number 2 would be Fool's Errand, and then 3 would be Ship of Destiny.
Yeah,
that's where
I would be 1 Ship of Magic, 2 Ship of Destiny, 3 Fool's Errand.
Wow.
Do you like Fool's Errand more than Fool's Fate?
I do. Yes. I love them both. But
okay.
So this is
Fool's Errand was tight. That's a tight book.
I love Fool's Errand. Don't get me wrong.
20% into Fool's Fate, I was like, this is very good, but also it could be called Thick's Fate instead of Fool's Fate.
Hey, I love.
Anyways, I like that character. I don't like that character as much as the Fool, and I think fair. So. I do, and I mean, we kind of. No, I can't say that. Anyways, Fool's Errand is my favorite of Tawny Man. It's not like I like it way more than Fool's Fate. Like I think both are top 10. So they're both like one among my favorite books ever. But I do like Fool's Errand the most in the first trilogy.
I respect it.
So before we close out, I don't want to hear a tie. I don't want to hear anything. I just want to hear favorite character from the Liveship trilogy. Jake,
just from my Liveship? Athlea.
Okay. Yeah. Chris?
Wintro.
How do I kick Chris out of this call? How do I kick him out?
High five. He's second.
I like Wintro a lot.
Yeah, Wintro is.
I forgive him. I know.
Favorite. Mine is it's close, but I said I can't talk about a tie, so it's Malta. It's Malta because if you would have told me the only other character that if you could have told me I would have loved by the end, like I would have been like, no way, would have been Kyle. Second would have been Malta. Like I really hated Malta in book 1. And the fact that I absolutely love Malta, I just think her character arc is like possibly the best I've read in a trilogy.
I appreciate Malta's character arc maybe the most. I think I never got quite as emotionally invested in Malta even at her best. And I was emotionally invested, but not quite to the same degree as Athlea and Wintro.
That's fair. Amber was,
and even maybe like there's a lot of series that have been pitched at me. It's like, oh, these protagonists will be terrible people, but you care about them anyways. And it's basically only like Kenneth is the bad person character that has actually made me feel the most emotion. Obviously he's a terrible person. He's probably my favorite villain in the genre. Yeah. So I think my top 3 would probably be, I mean, the top 4, I think the most common top 4 you'll see, like the 4 names will be Athlea, Wintro, Kenneth, and Malta. And that would be the order I would have them in, but they're so good.
A lot of Malta love in the chat.
Yeah, I like what I'm seeing. This Jennifer Wintro, are you serious? You and Chris are against me in this. You know, I will say, I said we couldn't talk about second places, but Amber was definitely. It was in my head.
Amber, damn.
Yeah, in my head, it was Amber, Malta, and I chose Malta because I liked Amber throughout the whole thing. You know, I didn't trust her at first. You know, I was like, I don't know about this.
I was only thinking of point of views. I always think of Amber like if I'm ranking Realm of the Elderlings characters as the Fool. Okay, I'm still gonna stick with Athlea, but add Amber somewhere in my top 4 and make it a top 5.
I mean, the whole list is long, and I do want to say, I know a lot of people are gonna say Kenneth. I think Kenneth is one of the best crafted characters from the get-go in book 1, like of all time. Like there's multiple like greatest of all times. Like if you had a Mount Rushmore of characters, like multiples from Liveships could be on that Mount Rushmore. Yeah. I think.
We need how about 4th person for morally gray / bad with that has Kenneth, Glokta, and Jaime Lannister. Who's your 4th? I'm just assuming you're including all 3 of those, Jimmy, because I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Yeah, it's pretty fair. Cersei, actually.
Okay.
I love Cersei.
Cersei's one of the best characters ever. That's another stream though. I could literally rant about that and how people don't give the due to Jaime and Cersei as they should. But there's a lot of resemblances between Hobb and George's work, and me and Chris have talked about it a bunch. And it's just something that I feel at home when I read Robin Hobb. And it used to be because it kind of reminded me of George's writing, but now I am just so in love with what Hobb is putting on the paper. that like I'll read anything from her.
Hey, remember how we said Brandon kind of borrowed from the Fool with Wit? I'm just saying, Jon Snow fits.
Yeah,
Robin Hobb wrote hers first.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying George.
Oh, George, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're definitely.
But I think they were just like both. I feel like there was some like wavelength connection because he started writing way before,
You can
and then
tell
hers
they
was
talked.
published first. I feel like there was something. She was actually sent a copy of Game of Thrones to Blurb when it came out, and she didn't. She said she got too busy and she didn't read it in time for publication.
That's funny.
Yeah, I know that they're good friends.
I keep seeing the quote on the Hobb books that says Hobb is superb, and I would actually say I keep misreading it in my head because I think my blurb would be Hobb is superior. I think it's just you can compare it to whatever you want. Hobb is just Hobb's Hobb.
I think Hobb is probably, and I'm. We'll see. I got to get through Rainwild Chronicles, right? Because I got to see if what my opinions are on the rest of the series. But I think Robin Hobb's probably the best author ever in fantasy.
She's obviously my favorite. I mean, anyone who watches my channel knows that.
Yeah, I mean, I really do. I think Liveship solidifies her in the all-time list. The fact that she's not Tolkien derivative is massive points, especially when she started publishing. I mean, that matters so much. Like I love Tad Williams. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think Tad's a beautiful writer, but Tad Williams is Tolkien derivative, and that's fine. I like that. I like classical fantasy. I like Arthurian tales, like all that stuff. But the fact that Robin Hobb took a step out and did something totally different is one of the most impressive things about her. And she was bold with the decisions. She executed it pretty much perfectly so far, at least. I think that knocks her up, on the all-time list for me. I mean, number one all-time for me so far.
Amanda, what's RH?
Robin Hobb.
Robin Hobb.
Oh my God, what is wrong with me with these obvious acronyms?
It's a Wednesday, that's why.
That I don't recognize. Well, I was thinking it was like the acronym for a series, and I was like, wow, what series is RH?
I want to read it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've read all of her novels published as Hobb, but I haven't read her Megan Lindholm stuff yet, which I'm planning to do soon.
Yeah, I'll be saving the Soldier's Son for a rainy day.
It's so good. People, I do not understand the hatred for it. I think people don't like the main character. He's not as likable as Fitz. Like, he's really frustrating and also, like, in the beginning, kind of a pompous ass. But I love him. He's my pompous ass.
Yeah, I mean,
in terms of pompous ass, I like Wheel of Time, so I'm okay with characters being pompous, right? So
yeah, everyone's an ass in that series.
Yeah.
I've got the Inheritance Dairy. I need to read it. I've got the Inheritance.
Well,
some Vandy and Kai. I got a lot of Megan Lindholm I need to read.
Who knows? Maybe if me or Jimmy reads Soldier Son in the future, and one of us hates it, we can have a live show where we explain it, and it can be a much less. I agree. That's brilliant live show.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something fun about being excited about, everyone on the same page with something. It's kind of cool. Yeah. Yet we still had all differing opinions on who we liked. And, Chris liked Wintro for some reason.
I like Wintro as well.
I mean, book one Wintro is the best character probably, but I could bounce back and forth with that all night. But all right, it's been over 2 hours. And we could keep going for sure.
Really could.
Who could have possibly seen this coming?
Oh man, not me.
But
I'm usually very reserved.
I mean, our farce here went pretty damn long too. And that's because Hobb's giving us some of the best content that we can talk about. I will be doing a Tawny Man spoiler discussion, and there will not be nearly as wide of a gap as between what Farseer and Liveship was, because I'm going to review Tawny Man as a trilogy. I did individual books for Liveships. I think I'm going to go back to reviewing a whole trilogy. I feel like I get a little bit more out of it whenever I collect my thoughts, and I can kind of see overarching themes a little easier when I review like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to review the Tawny Man trilogy as a whole.
I like doing first book and trilogy.
Same. I did that, and maybe well, I'm already almost done with the Tawny Man trilogy, so it's out on this, but we'll see. But my point is, we will have another spoiler discussion.
There are some trilogies I read where it's just like, I don't have anything interesting to say about it. So I didn't review Book of the Ancestor because it would have just been, it was pretty good for 10 minutes.
I reviewed the first book of Dagger and the Coin, and I felt like, I put it over huge. I like, this book's awesome. And I felt the same way about every other book. And I was just like, without spoilers, I can't really talk about this. And I don't feel like enough people care about the spoilers because it's not that super popular. So I just didn't review the rest of it. But Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for the chat. We've had a very interactive chat, some of really good questions. Derry was in there all night long. Just giving us gems.
Thanks, Derry.
Yeah, Jennifer,
Thank you.
Amanda, Crystal, I mean all of you. Overdose. I appreciate all you guys in there.
Spread the message of don't skip Liveship.
Yes, yes. This is a very sacred group that you're a part of now. And I cannot wait to do the Tawny Man trilogy. But thanks for spending your Wednesday. Jake, Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate you both. I knew it would be an excellent conversation. Make sure to subscribe to their channels if you haven't. I put them all down in the description. They're wonderful. They're two people I watch every video from, and I don't do that for every booktuber. Chris is one of the people I go to when I need a new recommendation. He just told me about another series the other day that I'm like, I can't be adding all this to my TBR. And then Jake, I think, has some of the best long form reviews on.
So good.
Appreciate that.
I really mean that. And the best Ship of Magic review I've ever seen.
Oh,
So if you
so
haven't
good.
watched this Ship of Magic review, you need to go watch it.
You need to have the best review for the best book. So
Well, with that, be safe.
I will say I had one thing for notes for my Ship of Magic review, and it was just a list of insults for Kyle.
I mean, that's terrific. Daniel Green also did that, and I thought it was very funny, actually.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good. All right, well, everyone, be safe, be good. Until I see you next time, remember to always keep turning the page.
Bye, guys.